The first episode of the third season begins exactly as we expected, with fire and blood. But for the moment, it is only sheep's blood, as Sheepstealer, the wild dragon, continues to ravage the countryside. He appears suddenly with his massive size and then incinerates an innocent sheep that was grazing very close by. However, the enormous dragon is not alone. Nearby is Rhaenyra, who has followed him for several days, and exhaustion is already taking its toll on her. But her desire to tame him is much greater, and she does not plan to give up. On her face, we can see the toll she has endured to reach him. Now that she has him right in front of her, she knows perfectly well that this could be her last chance. Either she succeeds, or she will surely become dessert. Once she is close enough, she tells him over and over to stay calm, and then places her hand upon him. At that moment, Sheepstealer seems to yield and settles down so that she can climb onto his back. But not everything turns out to be so easy. Rhaenyra manages to mount him, but the huge dragon ignores all her commands, and in fact lunges forward until he reaches the cliff and then drops into the void, giving her a new flying experience, very close to death. As the dragon fades into the mist, we travel to the capital, where Aemond wakes Grand Maester Orwyle in a state of absolute fury. He drags him out of his bed and forces his head down onto a wooden block, ready to decapitate him if he doesn't answer his questions. Orwyle has no idea what he is being accused of and begs to know the reason for this. At that moment, Aemond questions him about his brother, demanding to know how he managed to escape. Since Orwyle truly has no clue what is happening, Aemond is in no mood for excuses. He raises his sword, and just as he is about to strike, someone interrupts him. This man turns out to be Larys Strong, the former member of his brother's council, who informs him that Aegon has also escaped. This makes Aemond realize that Orwyle had nothing to do with it, so he stands down and leaves. Right then, the scene shifts to show a wagon traveling down the long road away from the capital, where we can see Aegon and Larys on board, posing as cripples and unimportant commoners. The pain Aegon has to endure is overwhelming, and Larys begs him to be brave. These are dark hours, but everything happens for a reason. But to Aegon, this doesn't seem true. Deeply mired in negativity, he repeats over and over that he is the king of nothing and that his best companion is a cripple, so he won't be of much help, at least for now. Seconds later, the wagon screeches to a halt. When the door opens, it reveals House Staunton soldiers, who now serve Rhaenyra, meaning it is time for Larys to take full control of the situation. Larys poses as a simple raven merchant, and the plan seems to work initially. However, the captain demands that they kneel and swear allegiance to the queen, something Aegon is completely unwilling to do. When the captain orders their execution, Larys completely changes his strategy. He reveals that his companion is Aegon the Usurper, purified by fire at the Battle of Rook's Rest, and demands they take him to the queen to collect their reward. As proof, Larys hands Aegon's crown to the captain, who orders them decapitated as a gift for the queen. This is where Larys demonstrates his great cleverness. He convinces him to deliver them alive to demand their weight in gold, arguing that a lifeless head is not worth nearly as much as the secrets kept inside it. So the captain takes them as prisoners until they reach the port of Duskendale, where they will sail to Dragonstone and appear before the queen. Meanwhile, on Dragonstone, Rhaenyra is thinking deeply about whether Alicent's offer was truly genuine. Handing over the capital and allowing her to take the throne, just to escape the situation safely with her daughter, seems a bit too good to be true. Although her council, including her son Jace, begs her not to fall for the trick or risk everything for an old friendship, a few seconds later, the council is willing to hear the terms of the deal. Rhaenyra explains that when Aemond flies with Vhagar to join the forces in the Riverlands, Alicent will open the gates of the capital so she can take the throne and separate Aegon's head from his body. Even though her son and the council make it clear that they do not agree with putting the entire fate of the war on the shoulders of a desperate mother, Rhaenyra decides to follow her gut and writes to Daemon to return immediately. However, in the capital, something very different from what we expected is happening. As soon as Alicent returns, the Hand of the King approaches her to say that her presence is urgently needed in the throne room. There she sees Aemond sitting on the throne, telling her that Aegon is as stupid as he is a coward. He has abdicated the throne in the middle of the night and escaped the city along with the cripple, Larys. Alicent tries to tell him that they must find him immediately, that it is extremely important, but Aemond has already taken care of it. The only question on his mind is where she was while all of this was happening. He knows perfectly well that she hasn't been in the keep for several days, and after thinking for a couple of seconds, she has no choice but to lie, telling him she was in the Kingswood sword because she realized she is of no use to her children lately. However, she now finds out that Aemond will not fly with Vhagar to Harrenhal, meaning her plan to open the gates while he was supposed to be gone is completely ruined, as is the pledge of trust she swore to Rhaenyra. On top of that, Aemond reveals that reinforcements are already on the way. Lord Ormond and 15,000 men loyal to House Hightower are coming down the river to help him defend the city. And that's not all. Daemon and his dragon are accompanying them as well. And as if that weren't enough, the Triarchy's fleet will soon break the blockade, leaving the city more defended than ever. This is the exact opposite of what Alicent had planned, as she had promised to hand over the capital on a silver platter in exchange for her safety and that of her daughters, a plan that couldn't possibly be any more ruined. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, we can see Daemon's soldiers slaughtering the Lannisters. Corpses continue to pile up, a clear sign that the battle is over and the army of the Lion has perished before the forces fighting for Rhaenyra. Amidst screams, fire, and blood, Daemon emerges victorious from this clash. We see him running through the last enemy soldier with his sword until the opposing forces are finally wiped from this world, at least for now. A few seconds later, young Oscar Tully, who has finally become a man by surviving his first battle, informs him that the enemy vanguard has been completely crushed, with only a few scattered soldiers fleeing the area. Daemon orders them to reorganize to hunt down every last enemy soldier, but Oscar asks for some time to bury his men, since, according to their traditions, Riverland's men must return to the mud. At that exact moment, a large contingent of men begins to emerge from the forest, a sign that the battle is not over yet. Daemon immediately calls upon Caraxes, his powerful dragon, to support him in the next stage of the conflict. Fortunately, the men coming out of the trees are not roaring or running in search of blood. They are the Winter Wolves, the men of the North, veterans led by Roderick Dustin, also known as Roddy the Ruin, who brings a gift for Daemon, the head of Jason Lannister himself, which he uses to prove their loyalty to Rhaenyra Targaryen. Daemon accepts the gift and informs them that they still have more lions to hunt, cementing the alliance and closing this epic scene with a smile. But while some men fight each other and shed blood, others commit depraved acts, something Gwaine is not willing to tolerate. He goes straight to Criston Cole to tell him that war is no excuse for his men to turn into beasts. Gwaine wonders why Aemond hasn't arrived with Vhagar. He was supposed to be there 2 days ago, so they could keep advancing toward Harrenhal to face Daemon. Instead, they are stranded in the middle of the woods, and he doesn't like what he has been seeing at all. Criston tells him to look around. They are very far from the city. Out here, men who are willing to give their lives deserve to have some relief. If he starts hanging every soldier who follows his impulses, he will have an entire army against him. Therefore, he recommends that he look up at the sky and enjoy the stars, rather than inside the soldiers' tents. Meanwhile, the dragon seeds are waiting where Rhaenyra told them to, in the middle of the forest, to ambush Aemond on his way to Harrenhal. However, since he has decided to stay in the capital, they are getting a bit bored and have begun to lose their patience. Not far from there, Rhaenyra has finally survived her first flight on Sheepstealer, but it is clear that the massive dragon is not willing to follow her commands. Instead, he leaves her stranded on top of a huge mountain and takes off, making it clear that he is not ready to be tamed. As for Alicent, she knows she must act fast. The moment she is in her quarters, she begins writing a letter to Ormond Hightower, her cousin, and the man marching toward the capital with 15,000 men, telling him that by order of the king, they must halt their advance, at least until she can think of something else. Aboard the Queen Who Never Was, Corlys sends for his son to inform him of the Queen's new orders. They must withdraw 5 ships from the blockade and head toward King's Landing immediately. Although Alan does not know much about the enemy they face, he knows that Aemond One-Eye is the kind of king who would rather burn everything down before giving up the throne, so it will surely be a massive battle. After staring at him for a few seconds, Corlys finally admits that he cannot completely mend the rift between them, but he wants to apologize for not being there during his upbringing. He loved his mother, but he had other responsibilities. For many years, he tried to forge a life for him and his brother. However, before Alan can reproach him for never even giving him his name, the bells ring, alerting them to an imminent battle. The Velaryon ships under Rhaenyra's command are about to clash with the Triarchy, commanded by Tyland Lannister. According to the initial count, 53 enemy ships can be seen, far outnumbering their own forces. Aboard the Triarchy's fleet, Tyland tries to explain the combat strategy to Admiral Sherrico, but she knows exactly what is going to happen. She has absolutely no interest in following Lannister orders. Her vengeance is against Corlys, and putting her dagger to the sea snake's neck is all she cares about. In fact, she sends part of the fleet to attack the northern side and sack high tide Corlys's castle to cause him severe damage, even if it means losing ships that Thailand needs to secure a victory with the fewest casualties possible. She knows how Corlys thinks. He will never maintain his focus when he sees his home burning in flames. Though they have different ways of fighting, both are focused on the same purpose, a victory. Only she wants to make her enemy suffer a bit more. Rhaenyra has already spent a couple of hours at the top of the mountain where the cold affects her fingers, and she doesn't know if she will survive much longer. Fortunately, Sheepstealer returns and brings her a couple of sheep, which he cooks for her, finally accepting her as his rider, though he is still reluctant to follow her commands. In warmer terrain, Ormond receives Alicent's message, but it bears Aemond Targaryen's seal, leaving him no choice but to follow orders and wait there for further news. The trick worked, buying her a couple of days at least. After doing this, she goes to her son's quarters herself to act like a concerned mother and tell him that perhaps the throne is better off in his hands. However, he cannot leave Harrenhal undefended, and he must march there as soon as possible. Alicent knows her son is afraid of dying, and uses that feeling to tell him that Harrenhal is a fortress that has survived dragonfire before, making it much safer to be there than in King's Landing. She tells him that with his help, the Battle of Harrenhal is already decided. Furthermore, killing Daemon will be such a devastating blow to Rhaenyra that it will bring many men to his side. That is why he must march. After a few tense seconds, Aemond kisses his mother in a highly uncomfortable moment. He then promises he will throw a feast in her honor once he has his uncle's head on a spear. With that, Alicent achieves her goal, managing to get him out of the castle. Back with the dragon seeds, they are tired of waiting when something strange happens. Hugh and Adam see a bizarre creature on top of the mountain, a sort of giant satyr, which is their cue to get out of there immediately. A few seconds later, Alice the witch appears, telling them they are missing a massive battle and that the queen needs them. That, along with the vision of the satyr, is enough for them to pack up and return to Dragonstone. At the same time, Rhaenyra learns about the battle between the Triarchy and the Sea Snake. She prepares to put on her battle armor, believing she must be the one to help them, but Jace tells her it is an unnecessary risk. They have plenty of men and troops to send as support. She must not put herself in danger. When his mother refuses to listen, he decides to take drastic action. The boy threatens Ser Laurent, the Kingsguard knight, ordering him to lock the door and bar the queen from leaving for any reason. If they lose their leader in a secondary battle, he will never forgive himself. Baela, his fiancée, tries to reason with him, arguing that he cannot disobey his mother, much less confine her, but Jace tells her that they have the strength to win this battle for her, and that the best betrothal gift would be to prove he is ready. He convinces his love to join him at the Gullet to destroy the Triarchy's ships using their dragons. As the youths rush toward the fight, his mother pounds on the door with all her might, threatening to take Ser Laurent's head for doing this. However, the knight stands firm and does not let her out. Her screams blend with the cries of the men dying right now at the Gullet, where we can see ships crashing into one another and bodies piling up. Crossbows, swords, and fire are the only sounds tearing through the thick fog. Right after, Corlys orders his son to steer them directly into the thick of the fight. He wants Sharako to spot them and give chase, as it is a crucial part of the plan. However, she is busy slitting his men's throats, killing anyone who thinks they are strong enough to defeat her. Admiral Sharako has the strength to kill 3 men by herself in an instant, and seconds later, she catches sight of Corlys's ship pulling away, so she orders a pursuit, just as he had planned. Thailand tries to tell her that they are the flagship, and that retreating to chase a single vessel will cause chaos. But since he is surrounded entirely by men loyal to Sharako, he cannot voice much opposition, or he will end up in the sea with his throat slit from ear to ear. Just when Corlys believes the battle is lost, Jace and his love appear on the backs of their dragons, beginning to incinerate the enemy ships with every single command. The dragonfire turns the enemy ships to ash and gives them a breather, but the battle is not over. Corlys orders his son to set a course for Dragonstone through the straits, though Alan warns him that with the tide so low, they could run aground. However, Corlys knows that Sharako only wants him, and it is certain that not all of her ships will be able to cross, allowing them to kill the enemy fleet leader in a much more even battle that will give them the upper hand. As for Jace, he has no trouble continuing to burn the enemy ships, but Sharako surprises him by firing firing a bolt directly at his dragon's neck. The iron gets caught in its collar, establishing a tight grip that threatens to bring it down. Immediately, Shirako orders the anchor to be released. A heavy stone drops into the water, dragging the massive dragon toward the depths, and though it does everything possible to stay airborne, the weight is too much to bear. Jace orders Vermax to rise, but they end up dragging the anchor for too long. Just as its wings are about to touch the water, Baela appears and uses her dragon's jaws to snap the rope. Back with Corlys, he has finally reached the straits, and they have begun to cross, risking the chance of hitting the rocks, sinking, and sealing their doom. Shirako approaches from behind with 2 more ships, and she has no plan of stopping. This is the vengeance she has been waiting for over 20 years, and a few rocks will not make her back down. Thailand warns her that they do not know these waters and that a single mistake could condemn her men, but she orders them to stay right in Corlys's wake, which is incredibly difficult to do with such a narrow margin of error. Fortunately for Corlys, his experience with these waters and the fact that he takes control of the helm is exactly what they need, managing to get them across safe and sound. In the end, the ship escapes with only minor scratches. The old mariner has done it once again, saving his men's lives. However, now it is his turn to witness something completely unexpected. But right before that, we see that Shirako has taken drastic measures. After watching her 2 vessels begin to sink due to the rocks, she orders her men to throw all dead weight overboard to raise the hull as much as possible. That includes the Lannister soldiers, starting with Thailand himself. He ends up falling into the water and slamming into a rock that surely snaps his spine in 2, meaning his time in this war is officially over. These drastic measures allow Shirako to cross safe and sound to the other side of the straits, ready to close the distance. This proves to be quite easy, as her ship is much faster than Corlys's, and a battle will soon take place where one of them will finally die. But this is where the most devastating event occurs. Once they manage to clear the rocks, Corlys looks up toward his home and sees it completely engulfed in flames. Alan tries to bring his father to his senses, but Corlys cannot look away from the horizon, completely stunned as he watches his home turn into ruins. So, the young man takes the helm and orders the men to brace for impact. Seconds later, Shirako's ship manages to ram them at High Samid, tearing the vessel nearly in half. At that moment, she gives the order, and her men begin to board, slaughtering Corlys's soldiers with extreme cruelty. She follows them with only one goal in mind: to kill the old mariner and avenge her brothers, who were killed by the sea snake. Back in the battle we left behind, Rhaenyra tries to help her people, but Sheepstealer has never been in a war, and his defiance is costing many lives, as the dragon's fire burns both friendly and enemy ships alike. The massive dragon attacks allies, and she cannot make him obey. At that moment, we return to Corlys, who wakes up dazed after the impact, and cannot stop hearing the screams of his men. He recovers, and begins to slaughter Shirako's soldiers. Meanwhile, Alan is fighting in the cargo hold as the water rises, needing to strip off his armor as quickly as possible before he drowns. Baela tries to stop Sheepstealer, but this dragon is much larger, and Rhaenyra cannot control him. So instead of fighting him, she decides to distract him and lead him away from the ships, so he stops killing allied soldiers. Unfortunately, in his eagerness to help Baela, Jace ends up overexposing himself, and Vermax takes a direct hit to the chest that proves fatal, as the heavy chain continues to drag him down and widens his wound. A few seconds later, Vermax can take no more and crashes into the water. The anchor has done its job, tearing his chest open to the point where he sinks, leaving Jace stranded in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by enemy ships. As soon as the soldiers notice his presence, the arrows fly, first into his back, then into his chest, until the young man finally dies. Back with Corlys, his duel finally begins, and Shirako attacks him with everything she has. The Admiral's agility clashes with the heavy strategy of the veteran mariner. In the end, the old man emerges victorious, but just as he is about to deliver the final blow, the ship slams into the rocks, throwing him out into the water. With his heavy armor on, breaking the surface is nearly impossible. At that exact moment, Alan decides to finish the job. He lunges at Shirako, grabs her by the neck, and begins to choke her with all his might, until he finally manages to seize a dagger and slit her throat. In the end, all that remains is death and saltwater. Both the men of the Triarchy and those of the sea snake will become food for the sharks, and only those who survive will have the chance to fight another day. The second episode of the third season is finally here, opening with a stark reminder of the massive cost of Jace's disobedience. The young man tried to protect his mother, but he now lies dead in the vast ocean. Through the fog, death, and dragonfire, Baela soars, bringing Jace's body back to Dragonstone. She is the one tasked with delivering the tragic news of Jace's passing to Rhaenyra. Watching her arrive, Ser Laurent knows perfectly well that his head will roll for this. After all, he was the one who allowed the boy to leave and locked the queen in her chambers. Upon seeing her son's lifeless body, Rhaenyra refuses to believe it at first. She desperately tells him to get up and stop acting weak. However, Jace does not move. He cannot do it, as he is no longer part of this world. Once the cold truth finally forces her to realize her son is dead, Rhaenyra completely collapses, trying to wake him with desperate screams and blows. At that moment, Ser Laurent stops her and confesses that this is all his fault. Right after, he offers her his own sword, ready to pay with his life for failing her. However, Rhaenyra knows that a man's death won't bring her son back, nor will it change the madness that made him commit that last act of rebellion, blinded by his own arrogance. Meanwhile, Alan and the last surviving men of the Sea Snake head toward the shore in a small boat. With every stroke of the oars, he tries to call out for his father, but only corpses keep floating up from the deep waters, from both the enemy army and their allies. Up in the Vale, Rhaenyra has nowhere else to go, so she shows up at Lady Arryn's castle to ask for asylum. However, a useless young girl with a dragon that won't obey her isn't of much value to anyone. Still, a dragon is a dragon, so she tells her that she won't stop her from staying in the Vale, but she won't grant her shelter in her castle either, meaning Rhaenyra will have to fend for herself in this place, at least for the time being. At the exact same time, Daemon celebrates the victory over the Lannisters, alongside the River Lords, and Roddy the Ruin, who has traveled a long way to join Rhaenyra's army and keep chopping off heads, like Jason Lannister's, which they keep on a spike while writing songs about their victory. But the party ends up being interrupted by the beloved Simon Strong, who brings an urgent message from the Queen to Daemon with what appears to be very bad news. This message completely wipes the smile off Daemon's face, as he is informed that Jace is dead, and that Rhaenyra plans to travel south to take King's Landing once and for all. That is why, after showing a brief sign of sadness, Daemon orders young Tully and Roddy the Ruin to wrap up their celebration quickly and get ready to march south. They will be the Queen's iron fist in the definitive battle that wins her the throne. Immediately, Daemon goes to find his reliable dragon to take flight and begin his journey. But first, he takes a moment to have a conversation with Alice. She has finally started to show her true colors and tells Daemon that what she desires most for her help and in payment for her favor is Harrenhal. Throughout her whole life, she has watched the castle pass from hand to hand, and nobody has seemed to treasure it the way she does, so she believes it is finally her turn. But Daemon immediately reminds her that she has no family name, no title, and no husband, and those are the only three things that could ever make her eligible to own a castle. So no, Harrenhal will never be hers. Instead, he tells her he could get her enough money and jewels to build herself a pretty decent house. However, Alice wants no part of this, and sharply tells him that it would be best for him to just leave, warning him very seriously never to return to this place again. Down on the shoreline, Alan keeps desperately searching for his father, but the only things he finds are the corpses of the Triarchy and his own fallen brothers, who unfortunately failed to survive the bloody battle of the Gullet. To help him with his painful search, Baela shows up a few minutes later, as she is also deeply invested in finding her grandfather alive. She gently asks him not to give up, confessing that her grandfather always spoke of his mother, whom he loved more than anyone else in the world. He was a rough and stubborn man, but noble, and they might still find him. At that moment, she tells him to turn around, and that is when he sees his brother arriving on the back of his dragon, also searching for their father. After flying over the coastline a few times, he finally catches the glimmer of his armor, and as we get closer, we can see that Lord Corlys is still alive, clinging tightly to a rock. At the exact same time, Larys and Aegon remain prisoners of the House Staunton soldiers, who have decided to bring them to the Queen as a gift, but also as a way to secure a juicy reward. This is exactly what they want. They are practically getting a free ride with an armed escort. However, the bad news is that the wagon and the House Staunton unit end up being ambushed by soldiers belonging to the Triarchy, who had moved away from the coast to plunder and murder everyone in the surrounding villages. Larys decides to use the chaos to escape immediately alongside Aegon, since they do not expect the soldiers to win this battle, and they certainly will not leave their fate in the hands of the ruthless Triarchy men. Unfortunately for him, Aegon is completely tired of obeying him and following his crazy, unexpected plans, so he firmly tells him they are going to Rook's Rest, and that is his final decision. Back on the beach, Lord Corlys has finally been rescued by his children, who share a brief family reunion, though they wished it were under very different circumstances instead of watching their home burn in flames. At that moment, he realizes he has lost everything and has nothing left to pass down to them but his name. He offers it to Alan, who has more than earned it. Finally, after so many years and so much time, Corlys takes the big leap and offers him the Velaryon last name, along with all the benefits that come with it. The boy stands up, cracks a small smile, and sincerely tells him that this means much more to him than a mountain of gold. Right then, the scene shifts, and we see Alicent watching as Aemond finally leaves the capital aboard Vhagar, heading toward Harrenhal. Without wasting a single second, she heads straight down to the soldiers' barracks to talk directly with Commander Laren. She tells him that what she is about to share is extremely serious, and if it ever gets out through him, it will mean death for everyone involved. Therefore, the commander knows that what he is about to hear is highly critical and could very well cost him his life. Alicent reveals to the commander that Helaena, the Queen Regent, plans to let Rhaenyra and her dragons into the city to surrender the Red Keep for the sake of peace. Because of this, she asks him to order his men not to attack the dragons or any of the soldiers following her. Sir Laurent tells her that some would call such an act treason, and the lowest price to pay would be their lives. But at that moment, Alicent looks straight at him and asks what he would call it, and if he is truly willing to join the cause. On her way back to her chambers, she runs into Ser Gawain, who, given the tense situation, begs her not to stray from his protection. However, Alicent tells him that won't be necessary, as she needs to speak with the leaders of the Kingsguard, and she gives him a direct order to gather them in the council room as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, when Alicent finds herself alone, she receives a visit from Lord Jasper, who begins speaking to her in a rather unseemly manner, approaching her with little respect for the Queen. With every step Jasper takes toward her, his true intentions become much clearer. Perhaps it is the fear of imminent death that has driven him to do this, but it is certain that if he lays a finger on the Queen, he will lose his hand. Unfortunately, Jasper has completely lost his mind and throws himself upon the Queen to subdue her and lift her dress. Luckily, Orwell appears alongside two guards, ordering them to arrest Jasper immediately upon seeing the immense fragility on Alicent's face. When Daemon finally arrives at Dragonstone, he runs into the Dragonseeds, who immediately tell him they are waiting for orders. However, what he clearly remembers is that they were supposed to be just outside Harrenhal, waiting for Aemond to pass by with Vhagar to ambush and assassinate him. Nevertheless, they tell him they thought they would be much more useful here, and only waited 2 days before heading back, which is complete and utter nonsense, though he really would not expect anything less from them. For their stupidity, Daemon slaps them, and that is when they reveal they saw some kind of witch who told them they had to return, as they were needed at the Gullet. Right then, Daemon realizes that Alice has her hands all over this, and it is a major issue that he will have to deal with later on. A few minutes after Daemon learns that the Dragonseeds failed in their mission, one of the Meisters informs him that they saw Vhagar fly out of King's Landing, but unfortunately, due to their utter stupidity, there is nobody waiting for him at his destination, leaving him with a completely direct path toward Harrenhal. The first words Daemon says to his wife are that Jace died fighting bravely for his queen. There is no more honorable death than that, but Rhaenyra only remembers with grief that he defied her, even though she knows that is exactly what children are supposed to do. She reveals to Daemon that there was another dragon, a massive beast with an unknown rider, which attacked Moondancer and led Jace to his tragic death. Because of this, the first thing she wants now is his head. However, Daemon reminds her that Vhagar has finally left King's Landing, just as Alicent promised her, so this is their big shot. She will have to leave mourning Jace for another night, as time is running out. Their deaths cannot be in vain, and she must finish once and for all what she started. Daemon's words give Rhaenyra the strength she needs to put on her battle armor and finally step out of the deep sadness of her chambers. Right at the bottom of the stairs, 2 members of her council are waiting, trying to convince her not to do this. However, Alicent kept her end of the bargain, and she is completely tired of listening to them. She will fly to King's Landing this very moment, accompanied by her husband and the Dragonseeds, to claim the throne that rightfully belongs to them. When the old counselors try to speak up once more, Daemon steps in and threatens to cut out their tongues things if they ever get in the way of a direct order from their queen again. Before the majestic dragons take flight, Daemon takes a moment to speak firmly with the dragon seeds once more, telling them that this time around, they won't need to think or make their own decisions. The only thing they have to do is fly alongside the queen and keep her safe from harm, keep their eyes wide open for any potential threats, and completely forget they even have a brain. Once Rhaenyra takes the city for good, they will immediately turn their attention back to Vhagar to make up for the terrible mistake they made before, and he tells them in a very serious tone that he expects them not to disappoint him again. In the following scene, we can finally watch the 4 dragons soaring powerfully over what is left of the bloody Battle of the Gullet. Dozens of ships and thousands of bodies float in the water as the dragons take flight toward King's Landing to finally execute the plan that had been originally laid out. Back in King's Landing, Alicent has to quicken her pace if she wants all of this to work, so she goes looking for Helaena right away so she can issue the key orders. They need to secure a safe passage for Rhaenyra and bring this war to an end once and for all, without any more innocent blood being spilled. Accompanied by her daughter, Alicent walks through every single battle station, speaking directly with the commanders and firmly ordering them to cease all activities. There will be no battle today, and King's Landing will not defend itself at all against the incoming dragons. That is the explicit order from the Queen Regent. Meanwhile, Sir Criston and his men watch Vhagar fly right over them, heading toward Harrenhal, and he immediately orders everyone to move out in an attempt to catch up with him and get there as fast as possible. Upon his arrival at Harrenhal, Aemond begins ruthlessly burning down everything in sight, including farmers, women, and children. Absolutely anything that shows any signs of movement on the ground ends up completely incinerated by the destructive dragonfire. Once the massive dragon touches down, her immense wings and legs knock down the columns as if they were made of simple toothpicks, and the soldiers offer no resistance at all, since there is absolutely nothing they can do against a power of this magnitude. Vhagar takes care of burning every soldier in sight to a crisp, clearing a path for her master, who climbs down from her back to finish the job. Sword in hand, Aemond hacks his way through the corridors, killing all the remaining soldiers. Bit by bit, he keeps pushing forward until he finally reaches the Great Hall, where he runs into beloved Simon, who is quietly eating dinner accompanied by his sons. Right then, Aemond orders him to draw his sword and face him in combat. However, Simon tells him he hasn't used one in many years and isn't here to oppose his demands, but rather to willingly accept them. Surely there is something he can do to give him what he wants. But while the old man talks, Aemond is very clear on what he came to do and ends up ruthlessly stabbing him in the stomach. When the boys see their father fall, they try to help him immediately, and one of them manages to stab Aemond in the side. Because of this, he ends up killing him in a brutal way, but that severe wound ends up doing some real damage. Though it might not look like it at first glance, he loses his strength fast and ends up collapsing to the floor. Just as Aemond finds himself on the ground, Alice appears, and she has the absolute perfect opportunity to kill him and put an end to all of this. But she doesn't. Instead, she just stands there watching in silence while the one-eyed prince desperately begs her for help. Back in King's Landing, the dragons finally soar over the city, and Alicent's orders have been carried out to the letter. Not a single arrow or spear is fired against them, making the whole display feel almost like a welcome. Following the agreement they made, Alicent and her daughter prepare to leave the city for good, taking just enough to live a decent life after having spent such a long time living as royalty. Outside, the dragons tower overhead, terrifying the villagers, whose hearts freeze as they wait to be burned to a crisp. But fortunately, this never happens. Even so, everyone runs terrified toward their homes, trying to lock themselves in as fast as possible. The first one to land and set foot in King's Landing is Daemon, who marches firmly right up to the castle gates. He draws his sword expecting some form of resistance, but the soldiers immediately drop to their knees, throw their weapons to the ground, and accept absolute surrender. However, even though everything seems to be going exactly as planned, Rhaenyra won't feel safe until she steps into the throne room and has her men surrounding her. Once inside the castle, a small contingent of soldiers tries to assassinate them, but they are nothing more than a quick snack for Daemon. With his sword in hand and his great skills, he kills them one by one, without them being able to even get close to his wife. In every single corridor they walk through, a couple of soldiers who still remain loyal to the one-eyed prince pop up, and they all end up dying at Daemon's hands until they finally manage to reach the throne room. There, Rhaenyra can look for a brief moment at what she has fought so hard for, a chair made of swords that has already cost her the lives of her children, and standing here, she doesn't feel like it's worth it. Still, she steps firmly toward the throne. The only big problem is that, just as she gets so close to reaching it, an entire unit of Kingsguard soldiers shows up, commanded by Sir Gawain, who is ready to die to keep them from taking another step. Just as the battle between Daemon and 20 heavily armed soldiers is about to break out, loud noises can be heard. The footsteps of 100 men can be heard approaching at high speed, completely surrounding Daemon, and this is where they begin to think that Alicent lied to them and lured them into a deadly trap just to be slaughtered right in the throne room. Commanding the Gold Cloaks is Sir Luther, whose words make it perfectly clear to Sir Gawain that he is completely lost. He recognizes Daemon as the true commander of the Gold Cloaks and swears his absolute loyalty to him and to Rhaenyra, the rightful heir to the throne. He then draws his sword and tells Sir Gawain to surrender, as all the soldiers outside the castle have already handed over their swords and recognized the new queen. They can either do the exact same thing right now or choose to die as traitors. Although Sir Gawain firmly keeps the sword in his hands, the men behind him do not and end up giving in completely. At that moment, Daemon immediately orders them to be placed under arrest, along with anyone wearing the Hightower sigil. Rhaenyra thanks Sir Luther for his loyalty, and he reveals to her that it was Daemon who handed him that cloak more than 20 years ago, so he had been patiently waiting for the right moment to return the favor. Sir Luther points to the throne and tells her it is time for her to take her place, but she is not ready for that just yet. Before she can sit down there, she wants them to bring out Aegon, the usurper, to settle the outstanding debt. Right then, we can see Daemon thoroughly searching the entire castle, accompanied by the Gold Cloaks. But no matter how many chambers they check, Aegon is nowhere to be found. And it is Maester Orwyle who finally reveals that Aegon fled several nights ago, accompanied by Larys Strong, the Master of Whisperers. Terrified of losing his own life, Orwyle drops to his knees and swears loyalty to the Queen. However, Daemon coldly tells him that he has no problem killing a Maester if he has to. Orwyle responds that if he must die, he will accept it, but adds that perhaps he can hand over someone who will give him much more satisfaction. Orwyle immediately reveals what Jasper tried to do and leads them straight to the chamber where he is locked away. There, Daemon tells him with a grin that he will deeply enjoy cutting off, you know what, before taking his head. But the jailer chimes in and mentions that Larys left him a special gift, asking him to keep heading down the corridor. In the very last cell of the furthest corner, Daemon spots something that cracks him up. For the first time in a long while, we can hear him laughing out loud, which means it is an incredibly good gift that made coming all the way down here completely worth it. Back in the throne room, Rhaenyra is releasing and welcoming all the lords and ladies who stayed strictly loyal to her, those who spent a long time locked up in the dungeons for holding on to their convictions and waiting for her to finally return. A few seconds later, the soldiers arrive with Jasper, and just as they are about to explain what he did, Daemon appears, accompanied by Otto Hightower. This is the man who used all his power to convince the most prominent lords across the continent to follow Aegon the usurper, and someone whose head Rhaenyra will surely enjoy cutting off. For a few seconds, she hesitates to do it, even telling Daemon that she doesn't know if she can, but he firmly reminds her that all eyes are on her and that she must display strength at this very moment. She cannot pardon someone like Otto Hightower, nor can she begin her reign by showing weakness. Otto takes advantage of this moment of hesitation to mock her a bit more, telling her to let Daemon do it instead, as that would avoid the clumsiness of a messy cut. However, Daemon draws his sword, which is much heavier, and hands it over to Rhaenyra so she can deliver justice herself and forget about all the weakness she has been carrying around for a long time. With a steady step, Rhaenyra moves forward, while the Gold Cloaks keep the lords from getting too close. Otto exposes his neck, finally accepting his fate, but when she makes the first strike, she hits him in the back. It is quite embarrassing, leaving her with no choice but to deliver a second strike to finally separate the head from his body and end the old Hightower's life. With his head rolling across the floor, Rhaenyra returns the sword to Daemon, who takes advantage of it already being drawn to decapitate Jasper in a single stroke. Jasper foolishly thought he had gotten away with his actions, but that was not the case. With her boots soaked in Otto's blood, Rhaenyra steps toward the throne and begins her solemn climb up the stairs, finally taking her rightful place as the absolute heir to the Iron Throne. Holding back her tears, Rhaenyra tries to fully compose herself while the soldiers drag Alicent and Helena right in front of her, forcing forcing them to look at their father's head lying on the floor, the result of Rhaenyra's very first official act as the new queen. The episode comes to a close with Alicent staring daggers at Rhaenyra, making it perfectly clear that this was not part of their original deal, as she had held up her end of the bargain and given her the Iron Throne. The head that was supposed to roll was Aegon's, not her father's, and with that tense, heavy glare, she silently promises that she will pay for this. The third episode of House of the Dragon is finally here, cutting straight to the action. It skips the intro entirely, showing Daemon standing right in front of the whole Hightower army, demanding to have a word with Ormond. But just a few seconds later, we realize that Daemon hasn't come to this meeting alone. Behind him, 3 dragons stand ready to attack if any of the soldiers make a single suspicious move. Once Ormond is finally ready to have a conversation with him, Daemon reveals that the war is over, his allies have fled, and Rhaenyra is already sitting on the Iron Throne. Ormond had heard some rumors, but still isn't fully convinced of the outcome, though Daemon assures him it is true and that he only needs to bend the knee and swear loyalty to the new queen. After that, he can return to Old Town to live out their lives in peace. When Ormond asks what would happen if he is willing to fight, Daemon reveals that his uncle has already met his end for his actions. The queen herself cut off his head as her very first official act upon wearing the crown. Even though Ormond would love to engage in battle and try to kill 3 dragons, he has to think about the men behind him, who are completely terrified, and decides to drop to one knee and swear loyalty to the new queen. After Ormond kneels and swears allegiance, Daemon allows them to return home, but he has just one final request. He wants them to hand over Daemon, Alicent's 4th child, as it would be too big of an oversight to let one of Alicent's sons roam around out there and not be under his care at the castle, where he can't harm anyone. With no other choice, Ormond has to send for the boy and hands him over to the Targaryens, his true family. And finally, after all this time, we get to see the face of little Daemon. After that, the episode shifts its focus directly to Rhaenyra, who, after so much bloodshed, finally finds herself in the room that once belonged to her father, where she spent a large part of her childhood and has many nostalgic memories come rushing back all at once. Daemon stands before her, delivering the good news. Ormond accepted their surrender and swore loyalty to her. On top of that, they now have Daemon, the little prince, under their control. However, Daemon tells her they should have burned them all to ashes, but Rhaenyra is not willing to rule the way they did, choosing instead to rule as her father taught her. A few seconds later, they bring Daemon in so she can meet him, but the moment she looks at him, she floods him with questions. She asks what he knows about Ormond's movements, or if he ever spoke with Aegon, but the boy is completely terrified, or at least that is how it seems, since he doesn't say a single word. Because of this, she orders him taken to a secure room that he won't be allowed to leave until he becomes a bit more cooperative. As soon as the boy is taken away, Daemon tells her that the little prince could be a future claimant to the throne, and there is no other choice. She will have to kill him. His young age and his innocence do not matter. The boy must die simply for carrying his parents' blood. Not far from there, a pretty heated argument is taking place, where Corlys finds out that the castle treasury was completely looted, and the crown doesn't have a single gold coin left to cover the expenses of their new reign. Orwyle tells them it was Tyland Lannister. He was in charge of the entire operation that took every single gold coin from the treasury. However, he couldn't gather any information because they didn't trust him. Now they are facing a highly serious problem, as all the gold they have back on Dragonstone will only last them 2 weeks to maintain the 7 kingdoms, and that is definitely not enough time. The second piece of bad news today is that Corlys confirmed Tyland is dead. He didn't survive the Battle of the Gullet. Orwyle mentions that if he told anyone where he hid the gold, it was Lord Jasper, the Iron Rod, the man Daemon beheaded in the previous episode for trying to cross the line with the former queen. The first thing Rhaenyra wants to do is organize her coronation. She wants to erase from people's minds the illegitimacy of the reign they were subjected to, and declare that she has finally arrived to lead a clean, pure reign, as it always should have been, but without gold. That is just not possible. On top of that, the pirates who survived the Battle of the Gullet are raiding nearby villages, slaughtering people, and demanding ransoms they cannot afford to pay. As if that weren't enough, the common people are starving, and the entire city is plagued by rats, a public health problem that grows worse with each passing day. A few seconds later, Mysaria arrives with even more stacked problems. The granaries are empty, corn reserves are low, and the fields lie fallow, meaning they won't be ready for a new harvest for a long time. Overwhelmed by all these issues, Rhaenyra doesn't have a single clear order to give. They can't trade with other distant adjacent islands because they lack enough men to protect the merchant ships, and sending a dragon as an escort would be far too risky. At that moment, Rhaenyra orders them to send ravens to all the great houses, so they send their annual tribute immediately and handle their own security. After that, Corlys asks if he should immediately send a ship for the royal council members she left behind on Dragonstone. But Rhaenyra is sick of them. They have betrayed her on more than one occasion, not with actions, but with their silence. She is fully determined to assemble a brand new council with new members who are completely loyal and trust her decisions implicitly. Then she tries to get some information out of Orwyle regarding the whereabouts of Aemond and Aegon, but he tells her that during the days leading up to his disappearance, he was highly suspicious and barely said a word. As for Aemond, the last time he was seen, he was flying his dragon toward Harrenhal, and Rhaenyra gives the direct order to find him, offering the massive castle of Harrenhal itself as a reward for anyone who assassinates the one-eyed king once and for all. At that exact moment, a rat pops out and gives the queen a good scare. Orwyle reminds her that Aegon had ordered all the rat catchers in the city to be hanged after one of them turned out to be the key to murdering his young son. The moment she leaves the room, Sir Luther approaches her to say that while he truly appreciates providing her personal security, that is currently not the job of the Gold Cloaks. He adds she should start picking new candidates for the Kingsguard, since he needs to return soon to his regular duties of keeping the city safe. However, for the time being, Rhaenyra has no one else she can trust, and she asks him to be a little more patient and handle the matter with Daemon. He will know how to choose reliable men for the new Kingsguard. A few seconds later, a bunch of staff members approach to tell her about even more domestic problems that the castle is currently experiencing. There are barely any candles or wine left, and the maids are on the verge of going on a total strike. Realizing they are overwhelming the queen, Sir Luther firmly tells them to get out. There will be plenty of time in the coming days to settle the matter of the wine and candles. He even threatens to throw every single one of them into a dark cell for 3 whole days if they are still there when the doors open. Back with Rhaenyra, she walks straight to Alicent's room to ask her where the gold is, but she has no idea. She never noticed it was taken, much less saw Tyland Lannister at the castle. By the time she returned from Dragonstone, Aegon had already vanished, and surely the gold was gone too, so she cannot come asking for that kind of confidential information from them, especially after they risked so much just so she could win back the throne once and for all. Alicent tells her that nobody outside the castle knows what Aegon actually looks like. After his horrific burns, he is completely unrecognizable, so she can officially declare him dead. If he ever returns, she can firmly claim that he is just a low-life imposter, since he looks nothing like the man he used to be. As for the gold, she could have asked her father, but it turns out she had him beheaded without asking a single question. Or did she already forget that they ran straight into his head the last time they saw each other? Now, regarding the second part of the deal, the one where they would be totally free to leave with enough to live out their lives in peace, they will have to postpone it indefinitely until Aemond shows up. So, for now, they are prisoners of war. They won't be allowed to leave their room without an armed escort. Just as she steps out of Alicent's room, she notices that the preparations for her new reign are getting underway. The staff members are throwing away all of the Green's belongings, as well as all the insignia of House Hightower. On top of that, as she walks through the castle hallways, she catches a vision of her late son, but then it turns out it's just a boy who shares a slight physical resemblance, and her tired mind is playing nasty tricks on her. For her next order, Rhaenyra tells Mysaria to thoroughly interrogate the staff. Anyone among them who still holds even a slight sense of loyalty to the Hightowers must be replaced from their duties immediately. That same afternoon, Rhaenyra meets with the High Septon and tells him that, although her official coronation is a bit delayed, she wishes to be anointed by him as the rightful queen of the throne. However, not long ago, he conducted an identical ceremony for Aegon, whose body has not yet been found, and until his actual death is verified, another sacred ceremony cannot be performed. Although at this moment Rhaenyra would thoroughly enjoy getting rid of him completely, she knows it is not wise to make an enemy of the faith. For the starving commoners outside these walls, faith is the only thing that comforts them at night, and it would be highly problematic if word got out that the new queen is an enemy of religion. Tonight, Lord Corlys invites her to a private dinner to make a request that is simple enough for her right now, but one she doesn't feel entirely comfortable with. He has officially named Alan as his sole heir, and he fully intends for both him and Adam to carry his last name and his title of Lord. Everything that happened on this long day is just too much for Rhaenyra to sleep in peace. So when night falls and nobody is watching her, she finds her way to Daemon's bed to get some comfort in a situation that feels completely overwhelming for the time being. The next morning, the queen gets ready for her public audiences with the poor people of the city, who have many requests, and she is willing to patiently listen to every single one of them. But the ceremony gets unexpectedly delayed since she starts her monthly bleeding, and that is a biological issue they never had with the previous kings. Feeling unwell and with far too many complaints to hear, Lord Corlys has to step in to give her his wise advice, as she isn't fully familiar with the land around her. On top of that, the poor complain that the dragons are completely hogging the sheep supply, and the wool is going to waste. To ensure the animals get fully shorn before being slaughtered, a financial investment is required, and if she falters before them, she might accidentally reveal the major secret that the royal coffers are completely empty and that the crown was looted. The next petition comes from a woman named Sylvia, who has always loyally supported her, and she says that a large part of the famine the common people are suffering through comes directly from the rich, who have cornered the entire market and have been hoarding all the food, leaving nothing but cheap leftovers for the rest of the population. And that is an urgent matter that Rhaenyra promises to deal with immediately. Once the petitions end, Rhaenyra wants to know if they have already discovered who the rider of Sheepstealer is, the wild dragon that caused the death of her son, as she wants revenge. On top of that, she hasn't received any news about Aemond, since nobody has seen him lately, and he seems to have completely vanished after the battle at Harrenhal. At that moment, they are interrupted by an urgent administrative matter, since their dragon riders deserve to have their rightful titles. Ulf chooses the seat of Driftmark and ends up being named a Lord of the Realm. But when it's Adam's turn, Rhaenyra does not grant him the Velaryon last name, as she still doesn't agree with Lord Corlys's request. Right after naming the dragon seeds as knights, there remains the pending issue of what they were originally promised: houses, dowries, and a decent life with their wives. But at this moment, when the crown is completely bankrupt, Rhaenyra asks them for patience while they establish their new responsibilities. That night, completely overwhelmed by all the petitions and problems existing not just in the castle, but also across the city, Rhaenyra agrees to meet with Alicent, who asks her for one last personal favor. She wants her father's remains sent back to Old Town, where they can be properly buried alongside his wife, and Rhaenyra grants her request in exchange for a piece of their sincere advice. She wants to know how she managed to bear the heavy burden of ruling the city and keeping all of this afloat, with so many difficult decisions to make in a single day. Alicent confesses to her that one cannot be the ruler of the 7 kingdoms and of a massive castle and still remain the exact same person. There are tough choices to make, and the slightest mistake costs human lives. Alicent reminds her that her father might have ruled a peaceful world that he built himself, but they are no longer living in that world, and an iron fist is absolutely necessary. Following that harsh advice, Rhaenyra invites the nobles to a very special banquet that same night, which everyone is thrilled to attend to swear their eternal loyalty. However, when the food is served, it is revealed that every single wealthy person in the city has a roasted rat sitting right in front of them. The very same disgusting food the poor have been eating lately, since they have hoarded every bite of decent food with their money, leaving thousands to starve to death. Once the banquet before them is revealed, Rhaenyra informs them that at this very moment, her guards are entering their homes and seizing all the hoarded food to distribute it effectively among the poor. Anyone among them who tries to oppose this direct order or attempts to halt the actions of her guards will be immediately arrested and charged with treason. That night, while watching the poor receive a decent bite of food, Daemon tries to convince his wife that their ancestor conquered the world with just 3 dragons. She has 6 at her full disposal, which means they can conquer much more. They can fly to Dorne and take all the gold they want. They can conquer Essos, and from there, move on to the free cities. There is not a single inch of land in this world that does not belong to them with 6 dragons. However, she is far too focused on ruling a single castle. He wants her to expand her mind and cast her gaze far beyond these stone walls. He wants Valyria to rise from the ashes and for the world to see them as true gods once again. But she asks him to be patient. The 7 kingdoms are enough for now. Later on, they will look toward the horizon together. At that moment, Daemon decides to leave and travel to the Vale to collect in gold from the men they failed to send. It is gold they urgently need, but before leaving, he firmly reminds her that she still needs to kill Daemon. Every breath the boy takes is a direct threat to her throne. The next morning, the common people are happy, and Mysaria tells her to completely forget about the Septon's approval. Having the people's approval is much better, and they are thrilled with her recent actions, which speaks volumes about her future reign. That morning, Rhaenyra delivers an emotional speech from the marketplace, demonstrating that she is here to be an equal and a merciful queen who cares about every single one of them, relieving the hunger they have been enduring and promising that soon there will be much more for everyone. With every loaf of bread she hands out to the people, she receives cheers and heartfelt applause, but this is only a temporary fix to their problems. If the crown doesn't start producing, the hunger will return, and this time she won't have anything left to take from the nobles who are already upset by her actions from the night before. As soon as she returns to the castle, Corlys is waiting for her impatiently to discuss a matter that bothers him quite a bit. The fact that she named Adam of Hull and did not grant him his last name is not what they agreed upon. Rhaenyra tells him she knows all too well about the rumors that have plagued her children, and since her reign is just beginning, she cannot legitimize infidelity that way, but Corlys snaps. He has given everything he has to her service, the lives of his men and the walls of his own castle, which are now in flames and ruins, all so she could sit on the Iron Throne. The only thing he asked for in return was to legitimize his bastard sons. To place her sword upon his shoulders and grant him a last name, he has proudly protected his entire life, one that will secure a prosperous future for his house, which still needs to be completely rebuilt. But Rhaenyra refuses to give him that just because she wants to appear to the realm as something she really isn't. Corlys's rage makes him say dangerous things for which his own brother lost his head in the past. Accusing Rhaenyra's children of being bastards is punishable directly by death, and Sir Luther stands more than ready to draw his sword and carry out the sentence. But Rhaenyra stops him in his tracks, even though every fiber of her being tells her that Lord Corlys must be punished for his harsh words. But that is a complex matter they will have to deal with later, as she wants to speak directly with Alicent and reveals to her that she has her son Daemon right here in the stronghold. They have a highly important decision to make, since, as Viserys' youngest son, she knows perfectly well that he can lay claim to the throne, and that is not something she is willing to permit under any circumstances. So, option 1, her son dies immediately, or option 2, he joins the Night's Watch and renounces his noble title to live in the distant north, where he won't pose any real threat to the current reign. Her son will take the Black, join the Night's Watch, and serve there for the rest of his life, where he won't be allowed to marry or have children of his own, just as the strict rules of the Watchmen dictate. Upon hearing this, Alicent begs her to please let her see him one last time, so Rhaenyra arranges a private meeting. However, when Alicent steps into the designated room, it only takes her 2 seconds of staring at the boy's face to realize that this is not Daemon, and that the queen has been completely fooled. And that's not all. The imposter standing before them has been perfectly manipulated to pass himself off as the little prince, and his hair has been dyed a platinum white color to make him look like a true Targaryen. All on direct orders from Ormond, who threatened to murder the boy's biological mother if he didn't faithfully obey him in this dangerous ploy. Rhaenyra notices the blatant deception right away. Alicent's expression doesn't reflect that of a mother seeing her own son, and she forces the boy to confess everything. Because of this, they now have to urgently track down Ormond to uncover his true intentions and what exactly he is planning, since at the beginning of the episode, we could see he was highly reluctant to show his true loyalty to the new queen, and even had the immense curiosity to find out what would happen if they chose to fight. The moment she leaves the room to send a messenger raven, the queen is hurried toward the main gate, where a dragon keeper who escaped the oppressive Hightower forces has traveled from very far away just to speak with her. While in the background, we can clearly see that all the green banners belonging to that enemy house are being burned completely to ashes. The old man reveals to the queen that Lord Ormond and his military forces have completely seized the town of Tumbleton, holding all of its inhabitants as unarmed hostages. And not only that, they are spreading rapidly throughout the region, and there are already many casualties piling up. Rhaenyra immediately orders them to bring her own dragon to burn them all, but the old man warns her that Ormond's soldiers are completely mixed in with innocent civilians, so if she does that, many mothers and children will tragically die, people who are only hoping for mercy and for someone brave to rescue them from this nightmare. Rhaenyra knows very well that her army is vast and her battle power is unmatched, so she has absolutely no idea what Ormond is planning with this risky move. While the colors of his house burn intensely in the background, the episode comes to its definitive end, leaving the true intentions of this relentless new enemy of the crown shrouded in complete mystery. The fourth episode of Season 3 is finally here. After a short week of rest, it's time to go back to the Seven Kingdoms. And this chapter opens with a group of men being forced to drag logs toward a castle. Every man capable of lifting weight ends up recruited, no matter what he was doing. The 15,000 soldiers under Lord Ormond's command enter people's houses to stay there overnight, without caring what they might think about it. Having to endure the soldiers' lecherous stares, men who have been away from their homes for a long time and don't care who each woman belongs to, only wanting to satisfy their urges. In Lord Footle's main house, they are quite unhappy about this invasion, but Ormond reminds them that having knelt before Rhaenyra is punished with death, so either they stop complaining or lose their heads. It's their choice, since Tumbleton no longer has any defenses, and they are practically prisoners, even though they're being treated better than they should be. When Footle's wife tells Ormond straight to his face that Rhaenyra is the rightful queen, he gets angry. He assures her that she's nothing but a bitch with a dragon, that she'll soon lose everything she has, since his mission is to restore the legitimate line to the throne. A few seconds later, his trusted man shows up to tell him that Lord Baratheon keeps making excuses to move his troops, which means they won't have his support for the moment. And that's not good news. Ormond is furious. Baratheon secured a marriage to one of Aemon's daughters, and now he refuses to lend his help. That's something he swears he'll make him pay for in blood. However, for the moment, there are more urgent matters, since there's still no news from Harrenhal, the last place Vhagar was seen, and without her, their defenses won't withstand a direct attack from Rhaenyra and her dragon seeds. The real Daemon, who is right beside him and has dyed his hair to go unnoticed, is deeply worried about his brother's health, since there's been no word of him for days, and he has no idea that someone stabbed him and that his life is in the hands of the witch Alice. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra can't understand why Ormond would take a town like Tumbleton, which has no defenses or soldiers. Its main activity is trade, so why risk his life to take that particular place? The problem in solving this situation is that the soldiers are inside innocent people's houses, so using dragons isn't an option. On top of that, slaughtering people who knelt before her and accepted her rule would make her look like Maegor, and the same gods who gave her the throne would take it away for such cruelty. This is where Orwyl decides to step in and tell her that the Riverlands army, marching under Daemon's orders, isn't far from Tumbleton, and it would be far more merciful to use soldiers to clear the enemy's houses than to send in the dragons. Rhaenyra accepts his advice and tells him that as long as he stays loyal and useful, he can have a seat at her table. So orders are immediately sent to Lord Tully to divert his march and head to Tumbleton to free the town from Ormond's soldiers. However, in order to get his position as Grand Maester back, he must accept new responsibilities. Above all, that Mysaria must learn everything that arrives by Raven, since she is the advisor who holds the Queen's full trust. But since it will take the Riverlands army weeks to reach Tumbleton, Rhaenyra orders a dragon to be sent to stand guard, so they can make sure Ormond doesn't leave the town beforehand, since he chose to get himself into this problem, and now she'll decide when he gets out of it. Once the problems outside the castle are settled for the moment, Mysaria tells her that the lack of resources is causing a lot of trouble. They could name a master of coin. When people find out the treasury is empty, they'll have someone to blame. She just needs to think of someone who deserves a certain kind of punishment. She immediately thinks of calling on Torrhen Manderling, the man who praised her move with the rats a few days earlier and complimented her boldness, but made her feel as though she knew nothing about the castle she's ruling. After the meeting, Rhaenyra meets once again with Alicent to ask her what she knows about Ormond, and she tells her that he considers himself a scholar, despises the ignorant, and that during the brief time she visited Old Town, she realized he was quite cruel. Alicent confesses that she gave Viserys 3 of her children, but the 4th one she wanted to be a Hightower, to grow up in those lands and learn the same stories she did. And considering what has happened to the 3 sons she left here, she's sure she made the right decision. One last thing she remembers about Ormond is that he has a very strong sensitivity to smells, which is why he's obsessed with his men bathing at least once every 3 days, and that could be a good way to get to him. As for Corlys, when his son goes to tell him the queen needs to meet with him, he refuses and tells him that his job as Hand of the King will soon be available, since he plans to rebuild what was taken from him, but someone else could take his place. He tells him he's sorry he can't give him his legitimacy or his last name, but he can give him the chance to forge his own. Before his father leaves, Alan tells him that anger and frustration aren't something you can cut down with a sword, and that he should think carefully before turning his back on the queen. He gave everything he had to Rhaenyra, even his life, more than once, and she denied him the one thing he asked for, and for him, that's enough to make his decision. At this point in the story, we finally get an update on what happened with Aegon. After weeks of traveling, surviving enough assassination attempts, and the pain of his wounds, he finds his dragon's corpse. But after spending a few moments with him, trying to tell if he's still alive, some men show up and try to charge him for touching what used to be his. Realizing they have enough coin to pay, one of the thieves pulls out a knife, and at that moment, Larys knows he has to get Aegon out of there right away, or they'll be killed over a couple of coins. On the other side of the story, we travel with Criston Cole, walking hand in hand with Gwaine Hightower as they make their way through the halls of Harrenhal and hear something very large, far too large, moving nearby. Once they run into Alice, they ask her where the Castellan is, and she reveals that everyone was killed, as they can see from the soot on the walls, a sign that the fire reached even the smallest corners of the castle. She tells them Aemond was here. He took the castle along with his dragon, but when he learned that Rhaenyra had taken King's Landing, he left. And from the look on Gwaine's face, we can tell they had no idea what happened in the capital. They decide to stay there for a day while their men check the surroundings, and they discover there was a dragon's nest nearby, but it seems abandoned, which means the witch told the truth. Gwaine sums up the situation in a single sentence. King's Landing has fallen. They're stranded there without a dragon, and it's very likely both queens are now imprisoned. On top of that, their army is so depleted that there's nothing left to do but head home to resupply, except they don't have a home to return to. If they get close to King's Landing, they'll be beheaded, and Harrenhal, the burned castle, is the best option they have for now. Gwaine is very clear about what they need to do. They must travel to Tumbleton to join forces with his cousin. Even though he's arrogant and nearly unbearable, he's clearly no coward and no fool. But they will be fools if they stay here, waiting for a rescue that isn't coming. But Cole has other plans. There's no home for him. His father died of grief, and that's not a fate he wants to experience. His wish is to die in battle, and as long as he remains Hand of the King, his orders will be followed, which is why they're going to march against the Riverlands army, one that outnumbers them 20-1, but they'll strike like a scorpion killing an ox, turning into ghosts. Back in King's Landing, Alan informs the Queen of his father's decision, who has left with a contingent heading home, but not before promising to hunt down the thieves and vandals of the Triarchy who are threatening the kingdom's safety. Rhaenyra is a little disappointed, but Alan decides to take a risk and offer her some advice, telling her that her father has lost too much in recent days, and that since his decision, he's been feeling far more frustration than before. So maybe a fight is exactly what he needs, so he can come back to her side and advise her better. As for Aegon, he and Larys keep moving. Having escaped death just hours earlier, they run into a group of looters, stripping everything they can from the dead soldiers, and Larys begs him to try not to draw attention and to hide that dragon scale well, since they could cut off his hand just for having it. By the end of the day, they manage to reach the ruins of a castle, where everything they have left is taken from them in exchange for food and shelter. But in the following days, they'll need to work, and since Aegon refuses to do what's asked of him, they put him to cleaning out the latrines, since they need the waste for the crops. Back in Tumbleton, one of the Hightower captains grows tired of looking at his host's beautiful wife and decides to slip his hand under her dress, sparking a fight that ends with the man of the house being beaten down again and again with extreme cruelty. While that's happening in the small town of Tumbleton, in King's Landing, a rebellion is starting to take shape, since a message has been written on the city walls, "Queen of Bastards," pointing out that Rhaenyra's children have no noble blood and that she is illegitimate, with no right to the throne. We return at once once to Tumbleton, where the matter of the beating has been brought directly to Ormond, who can clearly see that the mother-in-law's arm is broken, and the host's nose as well. And there are enough witnesses saying that one of those men tried to violate an innocent woman in a vile way. This is where we see the extreme cruelty we'd heard about regarding Ormond, since faced with such evidence, he orders that the man be castrated and that his arm be broken in the same place as the woman he attacked. On top of that, if he causes trouble again, he'll be hanged. The next time Rhaenyra sees Orwell, she asks him to hand over all the correspondence exchanged between the Hightowers and the Red Keep, since she wants to know just how much power they hold over the city's faith, and to understand why the High Septon refused to recognize her without seeing Aegon's body first. As for Daemon, he has arrived at the Vale to discuss the matter, the promise made to the crown. The deal was simple. They would provide their men in exchange for a dragon, but they've been enjoying a benefit they haven't paid for, and that can't continue. But since the war has already been won, and the need for men isn't so urgent right now, Daemon accepts a payment as a gesture of goodwill, and once he has caraxes loaded with gold, he prepares to leave as soon as possible. The problem is that his dragon is somewhat restless, and a few seconds later, we find out why. Caraxes begins flying erratically and refuses to obey Daemon's commands, leading him to a cave in a nearby mountain, where he ends up finding signs of another dragon. So he draws his sword and sets out to explore the cave, while his dragon covers his back, sure that he's noticed something. From deep within that place, amid the darkness pressing in, we can see the glow of a dragon's jaws lighting up with fire, and the silhouette of a woman in the background. When she steps out and we can see her face, we discover it's Rhaenyra, his daughter, who has been surviving in this place completely alone, exposed to danger and the elements, and her tired face shows just how exhausted she is. When Daemon gets a good look at the dragon, he realizes it's Sheepstealer, the rebellious dragon that caused the death of his stepson Jace, and he has explicit orders from his wife to behead whoever is riding him. He never imagined it would be his own daughter. Rhaenyra confesses that she was only trying to help, but her dragon is wild and refused to obey her commands. She never meant to hurt Jace or the other soldiers. She was only trying to prove to her father that she was capable, and now she's ended up causing more pain than she can ever repay with her life. Daemon tells her to leave this mountain, to take a ship to Pentos, where she's supposed to be. Only that way will Rhaenyra never learn the truth, but she'll have to leave her dragon behind, since he's living proof of what happened. However, his daughter refuses to leave her dragon behind. He's a part of her, and he's the one who chose her as his rider. Daemon should know how strong that bond is, and he doesn't care that her dragon is wild, but her father tells her he can't be trusted. He already saw what happened the last time someone tried to ride him. His daughter tells him she'll stay in exile. He doesn't have to do anything or take any risks for her. After all, she's used to being the outcast among his children. The only way Rhaenyra will ever find out the truth is if he decides to betray her, but she won't stand before the queen to admit her mistake and face the sword. Before Daemon can keep talking with her, Rhaenyra withdraws and, a second later, flies off riding Sheepstealer. The only problem with her departure is that a shepherd was very close by and saw Daemon talking with someone with white hair. So if that rumor spreads through the city, it could reach King's Landing, and that's not something he intends to allow. Back with Aegon, he returns from collecting the urine and waste he was ordered to gather, when Larys mentions to him that the rumors around the castle are that he's dead, killed by his brother. The queen's own words. But even though this upsets him, Larys tells him this is actually good news, since when the moment of his resurrection comes, the people will realize the queen lied, and that he's blessed by the gods for having cheated death. A few moments later, when he tries to find some food, it turns out it's all been eaten, and he grows furious once again, walking straight up to the camp's leader and threatening to cut out his tongue if he crosses him again. But this is the moment when Aegon realizes he's no longer king, and can't go around bossing anyone. He's just a burned, useless man whose name is a lie, and if he doesn't kneel right now, he'll lose his life entirely. Aegon looks at Larys, and, seeing him with a dagger at his throat, decides to obey. He kneels and kisses the camp leader's boots, covered in waste, a lesson he won't forget. But something far more interesting is happening in King's Landing. Daemon bursts into the council meeting with words of justice and wealth. Not only has he brought back a large amount of gold from the Vale, he's also brought the head of Sheepstealer's rider, the killer of his beloved Jace, and he sets down in front of his wife the shepherd's head, though he made sure to burn it enough that it would be unrecognizable. At that moment, the council members keep talking, but Rhaenyra can only stare at the head, fixed in place, until she interrupts and tells everyone to leave at once. She needs to speak speak with her husband. Once they're alone, she asks him who that man was. How could he have claimed a dragon? And under which house does he fight? However, Daemon tells her he knows as much as she does. All he can tell her is that, as he was leaving the Vale, he saw Sheep Stealer flying over the mountains. So he followed him and beheaded the man riding him. There was no need for questions, because claiming a wild dragon is an act of defiance, one that doesn't always end well. He was just a common thief, a lost cause, who thought he had the power to master a dragon. Rhaenyra tells him this isn't what she wanted. She longed to see him alive, so she could punish him herself for having caused her son's death. But if that's how things must be, then she accepts it, and she doesn't doubt that Daemon is being honest with her right now. At the same time, Alicent discovers that her daughter Helaena is pregnant and has been wearing tightly laced corsets to hide the secret. Back in Tumbleton, Ulf arrives riding his dragon to stand guard and make sure Ormond's men don't escape the town before they receive fair punishment for their actions. Meanwhile, following the Queen's orders, everyone living near the places where the messages appeared on the walls is being dragged from their homes in the middle of the night and punished until they confess who did it. The chapter ends with Ormond leading Daemon into a secret room where they've brought the man who struck one of his soldiers, and for daring to lay hands on a high tower, he must be punished. And he tells him that everything they're doing, everything they're fighting for, is so that one day he'll sit on the Iron Throne and rule as a Hightower, as a Targaryen, since the world belongs to civilized people, not to the masters of beasts. But first, he must learn an important lesson, that justice must be served in every form. The soldier was punished for his actions, but the man dared to lay a hand on someone who is an extension of them, a man who has fought in battle under their orders, and who has defended their bloodline for far more years than he himself has been alive. Ormond places his sword in Daemon's hands, and the boy stabs the villager in the heart. At that moment, his dragon steps in and finishes burning the remains, while Ormond declares out loud that it's time to move his piece on the board, closing the chapter with a steady and fierce look in his face, while the dragon of Daemon eats the rest of the body. After a week, the 5th chapter of House of the Dragon is finally here. But before we get to the events in the capital, we'll pay a visit to the soldiers under Rhaenyra's command, who are trying to move as fast as possible toward Tumbleton. However, the bridges have been destroyed, slowing their advance, and all of this is Cole's doing. The old wolf knows that Criston Cole is trying to ruin his advance, and asks the young Tully to let him take his men and search the whole forest for him, to bring back his head on a platter so he stops being a problem. However, Tully has another idea. He sends 100 riders to secure the nearest boat so their advance won't be compromised, and tells the old man to sit, since they'll discuss the strategy they'll use against Cole and his dishonorable army. But what they don't expect at all is that Cole and his men are already present at the camp and have started slitting the guards' throats, taking advantage of the silence and the cover of night. The first to lose his life is the captain who was supposed to secure the boat. Cole appears stealthily behind him and slices his throat with a dagger. Then they burn his tent and begin advancing slowly, without making noise or drawing attention. In the paper he snatches from the dead man, Cole realizes that Tully's order is to travel toward the boat, so they plan to get there first, as soon as possible, to keep ruining their plans, and to support the army in Tumbleton with their dishonorable strategies. Not far from there, at the burned castle of Harrenhal, 3 mercenaries enter, looking for Aemond. After Rhaenyra promised the castle to whoever brought her his head, the witch Alice has received many visits from men seeking the reward, but she assures them they won't find what they're looking for in this place. There is only soot and death. Before entering a castle they don't belong in, they should have read its history. These walls have been bathed in blood and are always thirsty. Right after, Alice picks up a rock and throws it into a corner, making thousands upon thousands of bats fly everywhere, scaring the mercenaries half to death, who truly start to believe the place is haunted. But before they can do anything to her, she makes sure to disappear so she can keep watching them and make sure they leave. The men's screams of fear can be heard throughout the castle. That includes Aemond, who is in a closed room, resting and recovering from the wound he was given in the back. He wakes up completely terrified, repeating over and over that his brother's face was on fire and trying to drag him into the darkness. She has been taking care of him, bandaging his wound, and treating him with a lot of affection, to the point that Aemond hugs her tightly and a few seconds later says says the word mother, as if a real bond had formed. Back in King's Landing, things are taking their course. The rats are no longer seen in the halls, but there are a great number of cats that have been brought in from other towns to help bring down the plague. At that moment, we see Maester Orwyle walking toward the old queen's chambers, making up an excuse to the guard that this is a matter of a feminine nature, so he'll be allowed to enter. Alicent is very grateful for his help, and in fact tries to ask him for another favor, but Orwyle reveals that Mysaria is quite insistent and sharp, so from today on, he won't be able to keep helping her, not without having to report it, or his head could be at risk. In the cup, there's a brew to end Helena's pregnancy, since her child could be very troublesome for Rhaenyra, and most likely she would try to kill it as soon as it's born, since it won't put her claim to the throne up for debate. But Helena refuses to accept it. She's not willing to sacrifice her baby, and she confesses that she knows Aemon is still alive. She has seen him in her dreams. He is burning, but not in fire. It's a clear sign that he's recovering and will return soon, and everything will go back to normal. Even though Alicent begs her to do it, Helena shouts in her face that it's hers and that she won't end its life, no matter what she tries, and attempts to tip over the cup. In the council chamber, the queen learns that 2 gold-cloaked guards were found dead this morning, their throats slit and stabbed in a horrible way, in a part of the capital called Flea Bottom, which is full of undesirables who do as they please. But Daemon is not willing to tolerate this, and asks to be allowed to use the gold cloaks to purge that area, but they have more important matters to deal with, such as the fact that Vagar was seen flying and attacking a couple of villages to eat the sheep. The bad news about this is that none of the dragon seeds could follow it long enough to find out where it was headed, and they lost the chance to locate or find out if Aemon is still alive. But since the dragon seeds are extremely worn out, Rhaenyra chooses to send Daemon, who refuses to obey her this time, since he must fulfill his oath to the gold cloaks and protect them from this threat. Being the queen and having your husband defy you in front of the council doesn't look very good, and once they're alone, she asks him why he's doing all this. If they've always known that the priority is to find Aemon and make him pay for what he's done, but her husband reminds her that the only thing motivating him to give those orders is revenge, and there's no honor in killing a fox that's hiding. Aemon is scared, and his matter can wait, since right at this moment, a revolution could be brewing in her city, and if she doesn't keep control in the capital, she'll have even less in the 7 kingdoms. Daemon reminds her that she is the queen of dragons. Her legitimacy lies in her strength, not in the insults people might write on the walls. The cruelty she showed before is what caused all of this. You can't go around cutting off hands and tongues just because someone insults you. That's not how you rule. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest, we see Aegon walking away from the camp while Larys tries to tell him that's not a good idea. None of them are in any condition to continue the journey, especially after what they went through before. Larys reminds him that they're 100 leagues from Harrenhal, and the whole route is full of Riverland's men. So basically, with every step he takes, he risks being captured, which would endanger the whole plan they've been developing. Back in the capital, Mysaria finds out what happened between Alicent and the Maester, and has come to make sure the problem is hers to deal with, and not her daughter's womb, since that could endanger both their lives. To make sure Mysaria doesn't suspect anything about Helena's pregnancy, Alicent ends up drinking that brew, risking her life to whatever it could cause her. Alicent begs Mysaria not to say anything about this, since it was only a slip-up with someone who doesn't belong to the crown. So, believing she has fooled her, Mysaria leaves, truly thinking that she is the one who was pregnant and not her daughter. But a few hours later, we can see Alicent with pale skin and cold sweat, being a victim of the medicine, which has caused her a strong pain in her belly. Also, she has realized that Mysaria has just replaced her housekeeper, and surely she will report everything that happens here from now on. Back with the Greens, Gwaine talks to Criston Cole about life in the Hightower lands and tries to convince him to long for a place there and to kneel before his cousin, who will surely grant him land and a lovely wife so he can die of old age and not by the sword. Unfortunately, this could not interest Cole less, since the only thing he longs for right now is a good death. He's wanted this for a long time. That's why he didn't seek Aemon's help before and decided to carry on this battle, even though they are greatly outnumbered. Suddenly, one of the riders has an accident, and when they come closer to check, they realize his horse has stepped on some kind of sharp trap that pierces through its leg, and it has now become a useless animal. A few seconds later, other horses go through the same thing, including Criston Cole's, who escaped, leaving him lying on the ground. This is where the soldiers realize that the whole terrain around them is full of these things, and in just a few seconds, they've lost many horses. Cole goes over to his loyal companion, draws his sword, and puts him down to spare him the suffering and pain, which means it will now be a battle on foot. Another one who has decided to walk through the misery is Daemon himself, who is determined to uncover the truth about what's happening with the gold cloaks. As they walk through the alleys, they hear the villagers shout, "Murderer!" So they run to deal with the matter. But what they end up finding is a new level of cruelty, since two of their best men are lying on the ground with their throats slit and their guts spilled out of their bodies. Right at that moment, we see those responsible for all of this, when a pigeon flies out of a window straight toward Tumbleton and is received by Ormond, who is financing this whole internal war and paying with Hightower gold for every gold cloak guard they kill. Hearing that others are dying gives him some satisfaction, but he's even more pleased to hear that Darren is finally learning the stories from the Hightowers, since it's his mission to turn him into one of them so he can sit on the Iron Throne and rule, not by his blood, but by the name he was raised with. Ormond asks him if he has studied Marea Martell, the only woman granted a military mind. They used to call her the Yellow Toad of Dorne. Since the gods deprived her of beauty, she was the first to call Aegon the usurper and tell him that the lands of Dorne would remain unbroken and would not submit to him or to those who came after him. After she said this, a great army came down through the mountains, including Hightower soldiers, unfortunately. But what they ended up finding is a completely empty castle, and the water wells had been poisoned. Everyone believed that Marea had fled out of fear and that she was defeated. But that night, her men rose up from the desert sand and massacred every one of the soldiers in their beds, proving the strength and intelligence of Dorne, which to this day still hasn't been conquered. Back in King's Landing, Alicent knows that soon her daughter's pregnancy will start to show, and she needs to find a way to escape that place, since she refuses to end it. So she tells her that she spent everything they had on a servant who will help them escape, getting them a couple of uniforms, but they can't take Rhaenyra with them. However, Helaena is not willing to do that. First, she asks her to get rid of the baby in her womb, and now she's asking for something much worse. So Alicent will have to come up with some other plan. If she wants to get them out of there, it will have to be together. Meanwhile, Alan and Baela are following Vagar's tracks, but he remembers they've been at this for days, and she hasn't eaten or slept, so he suggests they stop. However, Baela refuses and confesses that the queen won't even look her in the eye after her son died, and she can't help but think she's blaming her for it. She can't believe that just a few weeks ago, she was meant to be the future queen and to marry the boy she loved. But then all of that ended with Jace's death. As for Aemond, his wound is healing, but his mind couldn't be more on edge, since at times he seems to recognize Alice, and at other times he doesn't. The next morning, the mercenaries return with someone else and try to force Alice to give up Aemon's location when he appears and attacks them with his sword, managing to kill them one by one until he finally finishes them all off. But his wound reopens and he falls to the ground, which will delay his return to the capital even further. At that moment, we're shown his brother, Aegon, who as always is complaining about the cards he's been dealt, until Larys gets fed up with all this and tells him some hard truths to his face. He was a terrible king, considering he had every advantage in the world. The best knights to teach him swordsmanship, a dragon that took the name of the sun itself, and all he did was squander it, drinking and wallowing in mediocrity. And that doesn't just make him a terrible king, but also a terrible man. Although those words would have easily cost Larys his head in the past, at this moment, they hit Aegon with a lot of truth, making him reflect on everything he's been doing, and he can't help but admit Larys is right. Someone else who is also having a change of heart is Gwaine, who after losing all his horses, tries to make Cole see that continuing toward death is not the right path. The rumor that some men want to desert is spreading quickly, and it's not that they doubt his leadership, but that they don't want to die like he does. The whole road is covered in thorns and brambles, making the advance harder, and every step extremely difficult, especially since they haven't eaten or rested. Back with Larys, Aegon surprises him by showing up once more and accepting his terms to continue the journey. It seems his words have had some effect, and not only that, they end up running into, like a ghost, none other than Tyland Lannister himself, who survived the Battle of the Gullet after being thrown off the ship to lighten its load. But before we get to see this conversation, Alicent's plan has been set in motion, and both of them have dressed as servants to reach the tunnel that will get her out of there. But there's a problem. Alicent told her daughter that the servant would bring the baby, and that still hasn't happened. But the worst part of all this is that Mysaria is right outside waiting for them to reveal that their plan had many flaws and that she can pay far better than a prisoner can. Alicent has no choice but to confess to her that Helena is the one carrying a baby that could be very troublesome. Mysaria is determined to tell the queen this, but Alicent reminds her that she once heard stories about the White Worm and asks her to think of herself for once. The crown weighs enough to crush people's convictions, and Rhaenyra will be forced to do something she doesn't want to do, something extreme. And when that moment comes, it would serve Mysaria well for Alicent to owe her a great favor, since she is still a Hightower. She's not asking her to betray her kingdom, only to keep a small secret until the right moment. That is exactly what the White Worm would do. Mysaria leaves with a lot to think about, but she can't deny that Alicent has a point. The queen already values her quite a bit, and it wouldn't hurt for the Hightowers to owe her a big favor, one she could call in whenever things don't go as planned. Meanwhile, Criston Cole's men keep suffering hardships and come across something that finally pushes them over the edge. They arrived too late at the boat, and the Riverlands men have already crossed and destroyed the bridges, cutting off their path. Shortly after, Gwaine talks to him and tells him that maybe this was the best thing that could have happened, and says goodbye to travel toward Tumbleton and join his cousin. Back with Larys, he tries to convince Tyland to support him on his journey, but Tyland tells him he still has a few trustworthy men left, and the only thing they need to do is get Aegon to Lannisport. There, they'll be able to gather more forces. A few seconds later, we see the camp leader, the person who humiliated Aegon in a truly cruel way in the previous episode, sneak up and go through his belongings, finding his crown and trying to use it as bait. But Aegon throws himself on him and stabs him again and again with the dragon scale, holding his mouth shut so he can't scream, and kills him while revealing his true identity. In Rhaenyra's chamber, her husband finally returns with the key to the whole revolution, a coin bearing Daemon's face, forged with Hightower gold, who have declared him the rightful king. Now they know they have the same enemy inside and outside the city, and it's time to eliminate it once and for all. So Daemon returns to the Gold Cloak's den to inform them of his plan, but what he ends up finding is something much worse. The rest of his men have been massacred and laid out on a table, as if they were feasting on their own guts. It's a horrific, dreadful scene that reminds him the revolution isn't starting. It's already here, and it's not a few traitors he's up against, but enough of them to wipe out his most loyal men without him even noticing. The chapter ends showing us Alicent and her daughter finding a secret passage in her room, but the end of the hallway is blocked, and both of them are trapped in a place with no way out, since the door behind them has closed. Without a doubt, this was an episode full of tension, betrayals, and unexpected twists that leave everyone eager to see what happens in the next episode. The 6th episode of the 3rd season opens with the scent of battle. Criston Cole's remaining forces come across an abandoned camp, but something doesn't seem right. They've been marching for days, pushing to catch up with the Thule forces, but now they've found all their belongings, and there's no sign of any of their soldiers anywhere. Further ahead, if they manage to find signs of a previous battle, there are dead soldiers everywhere, but the culprit still hasn't shown up. It seems like someone has been watching over them from above, since all they can see are shields belonging to the men of the Riverlands, the people they came to kill, but someone got to them first. The campfires are completely cold. These men have been dead for more than a day, and it looks like they were massacred during the night, since only a few of them are wearing armor and manage to defend themselves at all. A few seconds later, we discover what this is really about. Although some were truly corpses, others were only pretending, and Criston Cole's men have fallen into an ambush they weren't prepared for. Many of them were still exhausted and didn't manage to draw their swords in time. Criston is one of the few who actually manages to kill several enemies using his favorite weapon, the ball and chain, which we'd been waiting to see for several battles. With a single swing of this weapon, he manages to smash an enemy's face, but even though he believes his men were prepared for such an attack, he couldn't be more wrong. He's barely given the chance to get up and give orders when he realizes his men are completely surrounded by thousands of soldiers who had simply been waiting expectantly for the right moment to enter the battle. In front of him stands Lord Tully and Rhodey the Ruinous, leader of the Men of the North, who is eager to cut off his head. At that moment, Criston Cole asks whether surrendering his banner will spare the lives of his men, but that wasn't part of the plan. Cole is given only a few seconds to prepare for what's coming, but it's impossible for him to defeat thousands of men with only a dozen of his own, so he knows death is coming for him, and he takes Alicent's handkerchief, the proof of her love, to hold in his hands when his moment arrives. With his beloved's handkerchief wrapped around the hilt of his sword, Cole readies himself and tries to convince Lord Tully to face him in a 2-against-1 fight in order to spare the lives of his men. But the negotiations are already over, and 2 seconds later, he takes an arrow to the abdomen, fired by a woman forged in war who shares her name with his beloved. The third arrow pierces his face, and Criston Cole dies in a dishonorable way, not the way he wanted, fighting in battle with honor and earning the right to have songs written about his name and his deeds. Instead, he ends up dead in a field that used to belong to cows, surrounded by their waste, so that the smell is the only thing left of his memory. And then, we can see the smile of Black Ally, responsible for his death, and Rhodey the Ruinous, giving the order for his men to be massacred. Finally, the stone in her shoe has been removed. The battle doesn't last long. There's no honor in it, only the desperate screams of men who know they don't stand a chance. Back in King's Landing, Alicent, who has no idea that the man she loves has just died, finds herself trapped in the tunnel where we left her in the previous episode. Her attempt to escape the castle was foiled by herself. Fortunately, a soldier manages to find them, and they're taken to the Queen, who by that point is meeting with the council, listening to her husband's words as he tells her that many gold cloaks have been executed in a vile and treacherous way. The few who remain want to quit. The men they've captured carry coins bearing Daemon's face, which is basically a mockery of Lord Ormond, who holds more influence in his city than they do, and that isn't something they can keep allowing. It's time to travel to Tumbleton and burn its walls down with dragonfire. However, Mysaria reminds her that a queen who burns her own subjects can't be trusted, and because of Criston Cole's work, the vanguard will take at least 15 days to reach Tumbleton. But Rhaenyra is so focused on ruling the way her father taught her that she doesn't listen to her husband's advice, whose work is really what put her in that chair, but who now seems too bloodthirsty for the council's liking. So she orders that they will be patient and wait for Lord Tully's vanguard to clean up the town. However, Daemon wants to go himself to cut off Ormond's head, but his wife has a much more important job for him. She needs him to use his cunning to clean up the streets infested with traitors. The Gold Cloaks were the first to swear loyalty to the crown when they arrived in the city, and they need their support right now. Alan offers Daemon the help of the Velaryon soldiers for his task of purging the city's streets, but he refuses. He'll do this alone and doesn't want them sniffing around his actions. Right now, there are close to 60 Velaryon soldiers in the city who could be at the Queen's disposal for whatever they need, but she needs many more, so she asks Alan to travel to talk to his father and send reinforcements. After that, the meeting is interrupted for a moment when one of the soldiers informs her that a garrison from House Baratheon has come to speak with her. If you don't remember, the Baratheons promised to send men for her siege of King's Landing, and they haven't kept their promise, so this won't be a pleasant meeting. In front of her stands a man who swears loyalty to her crown and informs her that Lord Boros couldn't be present since he's currently in active combat in the Red Mountains. It seems the Vulture King has been raiding many villages, and that's what has kept him busy for so long enough to exceed the Queen's patience, and she doesn't find that a good enough excuse. But since the man serving Lord Boros has nothing more to tell her, the Queen thinks of something his shields and clothing, and bearing House Baratheon's colors could be useful for. A few seconds later, the scene shifts to the outskirts of Tumbleton, where Hugh has arrived to relieve Ulf from watch duty, and he tells him how annoyed he is about the Queen's orders. She's kept him from visiting the taverns, and he hasn't been able to see his friends or let loose for more than a week. It seems that ever since they became dragon riders, their lives have gotten worse instead of better. Hugh isn't very happy about being in the Crown's service right now either. In case Ulf didn't know, his wife is being held prisoner in the very city he's guarding, and he hasn't been able to do anything to rescue her. So that's a bit more urgent than having a beer with his friends. When the Queen is finally free, she goes to Alicent's chambers to address the fact that she tried to escape the castle after having been shown nothing but mercy. This is when Alicent plays her best card and confesses that Helena is pregnant, and now more than ever it's imperative that she escape the castle since she doesn't want to risk it being a boy. Mother to mother, Rhaenyra understands the sacrifice, but an act like this can't go unpunished, and now both of them will be confined to their room with double the guards, unable to see the light of the gardens. However, this would be a death sentence for Helaena, who needs this, since Alicent knows she's a dreamer, and sometimes, or almost always, what she weaves becomes reality. But this is necessary. Helaena can't be seen outside the chambers. If anyone realizes she's pregnant, then the queen will be forced to do exactly what she fears: terminate the pregnancy by force, or kill her. Since a child with her blood would be a direct threat to her reign, Alicent has to understand that her surname, Hightower, is directly tied to her enemy at this moment, and it would be far more beneficial for the whole castle if she were dead or imprisoned and used as a pawn in negotiations. And yet, here she is, eating and drinking comfortably in her chambers, having done nothing but be ungrateful for it. Rhaenyra leaves, telling her not to provoke her again, because there won't be another chance. On her way out of the chambers, Rhaenyra reveals to Mysaria that Helaena is pregnant, and she doesn't show much surprise, which makes the queen suspect that her whisperer might not be being as honest with her as she should. Mysaria knows that her loyalty can't be compromised, and even less so her honesty with the queen, and right now, the servant who helped her uncover Alicent is a liability, so she orders one of the soldiers to kill her, quietly, showing us the cruelty she gained from being the White Worm, and that sometimes, no matter how hard you try to defend those who have the least, you'll always look out for your own skin above everyone else's. The servant's death isn't as important to the story as the fact that at the Gold Cloak's headquarters, there's a message that seems to be bothering Daemon a great deal, and he's determined to find whoever is responsible. There are no more than 24 gold cloaks left in the whole city, and one of them says the popular opinion is desertion. Ever since the queen took the throne, they haven't received their pay, and although loyalty has kept them steady, they're not allowed to leave their families in poverty or die with no one left to protect them. Since Daemon can't reveal to them that the city's coffers are empty, because that would be a huge mistake, he decides to give them a speech and promise them that they'll receive not only their pay, but that their lives will change, and he'll find whoever is responsible for all of this. But those words no longer work, and his men end up walking away. Each one of them lays his cloak on the table, and Daemon looks at their faces one by one, realizing that the men he trained and trusted the most have just turned their backs on him. At that moment, the scene shifts to show us Alan, who has finally found his father. Corlys has been keeping the promise he made to the queen. He was killing and hanging all the survivors of the Battle of the Gullet, who had been looting and stealing all over the realm. Alan reveals to his father that the Hightowers are attacking the city from within, and that the guard is about to be overwhelmed. So they need men from House Velaryon to keep the peace. But his father is tired of supporting the queen, especially after she refused to give him the one thing he asked for. Although his father still hasn't calmed his fury, Alan tells him that he's doing exactly what he was told to do. He's forging a name of his own. He's now a member of the council, and he isn't asking him to support the queen. He's asking him to support his son in forging his own path. Despite that, Alan leaves empty-handed, but his father tells him that Tyland Lannister survived the Gullet and is heading toward Ruk-Res, so that's something valuable that could buy time before more men are needed. Here, we're shown a brief glimpse of his journey, where we can see Tyland burying the man Aegon killed that morning, and he reveals that, although the Lannisters want him back at Casterly Rock, he's realized a lot during this trip and is determined to travel to Essos. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra is still stranded in the mountains, eating berries and suffering the brutal cold, when suddenly she spots her sister flying in the distance and can't resist the urge to chase after her. Unfortunately, Lady Erin's men manage to stop her and bring her straight to her, where the first thing she does is slap her. She has no idea what's going through that foolish girl's mind, but the lady believes the sheep stealer's rider is dead, a favor she may owe to her father. But if anyone sees her riding that thing, they'll know the Erins were protecting the one responsible for Jace's death, and everyone will die for her foolishness. So she won't allow that to happen, nor will she let her house burn for the sake of one girl. It would be best if she left, and if they don't make her, then she'll send her soldiers to kill her. And even though they'll surely lose many men because of her rebellious dragon, in the end, she'll die and won't achieve anything she longs for. In Harrenhal, Aemond already feels strong enough to leave and start searching for his dragon, but Alice tells him there's a bounty on his life. This very castle will be handed over to whoever cuts off his head, and she tries to convince him to stay. He's safe here, and he still hasn't fully healed. She tells him that maybe the reason Vhagar left is because she knows he's hurt, and when the moment comes, she'll return, and he'll be able to ride her toward his revenge. But that moment hasn't arrived yet. Besides, he only has one dragon, but she has something to show him. Back in the city, Alan has arrived empty-handed, and that's something the Queen won't like at all. But on his way to the barracks, he runs into Baela, who is sleeping where no one can see her, since she doesn't want to show weakness. At that moment, it occurs to him to ask his niece whether she'd be willing to talk to Corlys, her grandfather, to convince him to send men to the city, so that maybe she can win back a bit of the Queen's favor that she's lost. But this conversation ends up taking a different turn, and Alan ends up kissing his niece, which is something we didn't see coming. So we'll switch immediately to Tumbleton, where Wayne has finally arrived with his cousin. He reveals to him that, although it might not seem like it, they have a big advantage. The Queen won't burn her subjects, and they're buying the time needed to turn the whole city against her. Ormond asks his ward to take his uncle to his chambers to bathe, since the smell is bothering him. And along the way, the boy reveals that he doesn't agree with anything Ormond does, but he wasn't given any other choice. He was abandoned to be raised by him, and until the moment comes, he must keep being his puppet. Daemon asks his uncle if he saw his mother while he was in King's Landing, and at that moment, we see Helaena weaving something at great speed, while Alicent tries to get her to eat something, since she hasn't in days. However, her daughter no longer trusts her. She was willing to abandon her daughter in order to escape, so nothing that comes out of her mouth will make Helaena trust her again. But a few seconds later, Alicent turns her gaze toward the loom and realizes this could be very useful. In the weaving, you can clearly see that Aemond is in Harrenhal, but he's in a fetal position, as if he were wounded, though that's far from what's really happening. When Aemond tries to leave the castle, Alicent reveals her plan. She shows him a chest full of dragon eggs, and she tells him they've been there for more than 100 years, cold and waiting, for one of the Targaryens to come and forge a new Valyria from the ashes of Harrenhal, and she wants to be part of it. Basically, she's asking him to forge a new future together, her as the Lady of the Water, and him as the new Dragon Lord, where their children will be the riders of these eggs, and will be given everything they deserve. At the same time, on the Iron Throne, Rhaenyra is listening to her subjects' petitions when something rather significant happens. She cuts herself on the Iron Throne. This can't be anything but a bad omen, since her father cut himself in the same spot, and his fate was sealed after that. But even though she's frightened in this moment, her husband isn't there, since we can see Daemon making his way through the city, wearing one of the Gold Cloak's uniforms to draw out the assassins, and they decide to attack him. His plan works, and he ends up capturing the most important of them, who tells him that they'll never be able to stop this. They have no names, no symbols. They could come from anywhere, and they won't rest until Daeron the Daring takes the throne that belongs to him. Once he says this, Daemon ends up killing the man, and a few seconds later, he runs into Ulf, who was heading toward the tavern in disguise. When the prince realizes this, he humiliates him in front of everyone there, telling him to obey the queen's orders, or he'll kill him himself next time, reinforcing the idea that the dragon seeds are deeply unhappy with what they've received in exchange for their service. Another one who's also tired of doing nothing is Hugh, who's supposed to be on watch, but instead decides to attack a merchant and steal his clothes so he can get into the city and see his wife. But while that's happening, we go straight to Ormond, whom a messenger has just informed that a garrison of Baratheon men has come to speak with him. He naively believes that Lord Boros will finally lend his support in this battle, but he's already sworn his loyalty to Rhaenyra, and these men have come for another purpose, having made sure to smell terrible and roll around in sheep filth before entering his sacred hall. Ormond approaches to receive them, but the smell ends up getting to him, just as Alicent had told the queen, since apparently he has a very powerful nose and struggles to string words together while trying to endure the stench. The men, dressed in Baratheon colors, ask to see Daemon in person, to kneel before him and swear their loyalty, and Ormond believes them, showing them the boy. But a few seconds later, the attack breaks out. Luckily, Wayne was there and realized that the leader of these men wasn't who he claimed to be. He knew Sir Aerion Baratheon when they were teenagers, and he knows he's taller and has brown hair. So they managed to take down the assassins and save Ormond and Daeron from what would have been a very embarrassing death. Back with Hugh, he finally manages to find his wife, and she collapses into his arms in tears. But when she learns that this whole time he's been with the queen and had a dragon, she can't believe he didn't come for her sooner, revealing to him that a lot happened and that she was mistreated more than once. Kat refuses to go with him and tells him she doesn't know him anymore. It would be best if he left with his dragon and forgot about her forever. Back with Rhaenyra, she's a little tired of going to Alicent's chambers just to be lied to. But this time, what comes out of her mouth is actually useful. She knows that dreamers are real and trusts that Helaena has never lied to her. If Aemond really is in Harrenhal and has been separated from his dragon, cutting off his head will be extremely easy, but if she sends a contingent of men, he'll escape. So she comes up with something much better. If Alicent is truly so determined to win freedom for herself and her daughter, then she'll have to do this to erase all the lies and deceptions she's exposed herself to. She will travel with a trusted soldier to Harrenhal and bring back Aemond's head. That way she won't just win her freedom, Rhaenyra will also guarantee her a comfortable life in anonymity, far from everything she's always hated. That night, Alicent has no choice but to say goodbye to her beloved daughter and promise her that when she returns, they'll walk under the sun. Only these words leave a bitter taste, as we've seen before, and maybe that will actually happen, but not the way she expects. The chapter comes to a close with Alicent leaving the castle with a small group of men, and then we see Corlys enjoying with his soldiers, having wiped out all the followers of the Triad, telling them that now they must return to the city to bring order amid the chaos. Unfortunately, when he steps away to relieve himself, Ormond's right-hand man appears behind him, and they end up kidnapping him before killing his men in the darkness, leaving us with a suspense-filled ending. And to see what happens next, make sure to leave your like and a comment. See you in a week. Without a doubt, this chapter left us wanting more. A week has already passed, and the 7th episode of the 3rd season of House of the Dragon is finally here. So, let's get straight to the point. It is a very lovely morning in King's Landing, and Helaena has been allowed to leave her room, or at least that's how it seems, since she was really only dreaming about being free and is still inside her chambers. It's just that on this morning, the Queen has come to visit her. The bad news is that she brings no word about her mother, and the Queen clarifies that she is on a crucial mission, meaning communication must be minimal and patience comes first before everything else. However, just a few seconds later, we realize that the Queen actually has no patience at all. After cutting herself on the Iron Throne, she is starting to believe that her death is drawing near, and she wants a dreamer to reassure her that it won't happen. But when Helaena tells her that she cannot control her visions once again, Rhaenyra loses complete control and grabs her firmly by the arm with great strength. At the exact same time that happens, Aemond is trying to recover his own strength, but his wounds are quite serious, and his sword is far too heavy for him right now. A few seconds later, his mother appears and makes up a story about how she managed to escape, explaining that Rhaenyra is holding Helaena prisoner and that she needs the most loyal of her sons to help rescue her. As if that weren't enough to earn his trust, Alicent kisses her son and he lunges toward her to let out everything he has always felt, keeping this big secret hidden between the sheets. However, just a few seconds later, it is revealed that it's actually Alice, who is so desperate to have a child with him that she has decided to turn to tricks to achieve her goal. The young man runs out of the room to try and clear his head, but right there, he bumps into his real mother, who has finally arrived after a long journey, and he can't believe she actually found him. Not far from there, the forces of the Riverlands, led by Lord Tully and Roddy the Ruin, are on the verge of reaching Tumbleton, carrying the head of their latest conquest on a pike. In the city, Ulf arrives to warn his cousin about what is happening. 20,000 men will be here in less than a day, and it's time for them to start planning a strategy, as the city won't hold out forever. On the other hand, Daemon arrives at the Vale Castle to ask where his daughter is, but Lady Arryn tells him that keeping her secret any longer is far too risky. She says it's time to send a raven to the Queen to let her know that the rider of Sheepstealer is still alive. Daemon has to beg her to give him just one more day to handle the situation, and she agrees, offering him some useful information regarding her whereabouts before he leaves right away. Not far from there, Adam is trying to convince Baela to help him get the Queen to change her mind so he can be granted his father's titles and last name. However, she reminds him that after what happened at the Gullet, she has become an outcast, and the Queen won't be doing any favors for someone who failed to protect her son. Adam tells her that his only reason for doing this is because he wants to get married soon, and a few seconds later, he tries looking at her with sweet, affectionate eyes. But Baela hits him with news he wasn't expecting, asking if his brother told him about the kiss. So, he just found out that the girl he likes actually prefers his own brother. Luckily, a big enough distraction pops up, and their dragons are able to warn them about Daemon, who is flying over at high speed. Right at that moment, the scene cuts straight over to Harrenhal, where we can see that Aemond has already put on his armor, while his mother tells him a pretty complicated story about how she managed to escape. Alicent brings him to Ser Edrion, the man who risked his life to save her, and whom she trusts completely. However, as Aemond extends his hand to thank him for his favors, he pulls out a dagger with his other hand and plunges it into his neck, killing the man who was tasked with assassinating him, and telling his mother that there are kept secrets in this place he cannot share. So now Alicent isn't just left with the most unhinged of her children, but she has also lost the only man who could have killed him, so she could gain her freedom alongside Helena. Back in Tumbleton, Ormond has Corlys sitting at his table, dining on squab, and being treated very politely, since he has a proposal to make, one that he thinks will be of great interest to him. However, it turns out Lord Corlys doesn't want to hear a single word of what he has to say, and gets up from the table, demanding to be taken back to his cell, as the only thing he'll get out of him is a prisoner, not an ally. A few seconds later, we head back to King's Landing, where a council meeting is underway to address the massive problems caused by empty treasuries. The man appointed to deal with the issue is starting to suspect he was placed there as a scapegoat, meant to lose his head once the crowd finds out. Before the queen can offer an excuse, Baela interrupts the meeting to report that they spotted a dragon during their watch. However, as they got closer, they realized it wasn't Daemon, but Sheepstealer, and worst of all, it has a rider. They don't know if the rider is new or old, since they lost track among the mountains, but someone was definitely on its back. The queen leaves the meeting right away, and Mysaria takes advantage of the moment to tell her that Daemon might not be as sincere as he seems. His absence right now, while Sheepstealer shows up again, is reason enough to doubt him. Rhaenyra doesn't take this well, and Mysaria tries to apologize quickly, but ends up placing a hand on her, putting the guards on high alert. 2 seconds later, the queen tells them everything is fine and demands that Adam be brought to her immediately. At that moment, we take a few seconds to see what happened to Aegon, who is riding alongside Larys and Thailand toward a small town near a port, since they still want to head toward Braavos. However, a bunch of people suddenly show up, and a woman tells them they are fleeing from an army that is very close to reaching the town. Their crest is a red fish, and Larys tells him that they are Rhaenyra's allies. So now there are only 2 choices left: return to Rook's Rest and risk them having found the corpse of the man Aegon killed and murdering them, or keep moving forward and try to avoid a direct encounter with the soldiers. Both choices are extremely dangerous. Back in Harrenhal, Alicent is trying to convince her son to return to King's Landing and take the throne, though what she truly wants is for him to die in any way possible. But Aemond reveals to her that this castle will be his new stronghold, where a new line of immaculate riders will be born, and that Alice is the chosen one for this destiny. What happens next is that Alice acts quite upset and asks Aemond to speak in private to reveal that a dark mist surrounds his mother, meaning she has come to bring him harm. However, he tells her to keep her dark thoughts to herself and not to try defaming his mother. During those seconds, Alicent leaves the castle and steals a dagger from Ser Edrion's body, a weapon that could be very useful to her. On top of that, she spots a few poisonous berries by the edge of the rocks, which gives her an idea. Back with Aegon, the guy he cleaned up manure with in Rook's Rest tells them that the Red Fish Army is searching for his Lannister friend, and he also wants to know if they've seen Janos, though Larys assures him they haven't, even though he knows full well that Aegon murdered him. So now they find themselves at a crossroad. There is no time left to run away, and the army will be here in a matter of minutes. The only thing they can do is abandon Thailand and attempt to escape via the river. But Aegon flat out refuses. He will face those men and make them change their minds, so they follow him instead. Larys thinks he has completely lost his mind. However, Thailand swears his loyalty right then and there, staying by his side to die with honor while Larys walks away, promising to tell his story through songs. We shift from that madness to a dragon fight, where Daemon finally manages to catch up with Sheepstealer and tries to bring him down, something that doesn't take him long at all. And soon enough, father and daughter find themselves face to face. Daemon leaves the safety of his dragon, and Rhaenyra tries to tell him to back off, as Sheepstealer doesn't fully obey her. She's right, because as soon as the dragon spots him out in the open, it starts channeling fire in its throat, right on the verge of incinerating him. Caraxes is 2 seconds away from killing Sheepstealer, but Daemon orders him to hold back and stay calm, allowing them to actually have a conversation. Rhaenyra tells him she's tired of living like this. She doesn't want to die far away from the people she loves, so she intends to earn everyone's forgiveness. She She managed to spot Vhagar a few days ago and is ready to die trying to kill him, or even better, finding Aemon's hideout so the queen will be pleased. Realizing she is set on dying for this, Daemon does the right thing as a father and tells her they will do it together. She can't kill Vhagar on her own. She's far too inexperienced, but with his help, they might just stand a chance. The bad news is that before they can take off, 2 dragons appear in the distance, and as they get closer, we realize it's the queen and Adam who have come to get their revenge. Rhaenyra lands right next to Caraxes, preventing him from taking flight, while Adam plays it smarter, making sure to cut off Rhaenyra so she can't climb onto Sheepstealer. 4 dragons are on the verge of a clash, and the queen demands an explanation as to why her husband is talking to her son's killer. A few seconds later, Adam returns carrying Rhaenyra over his shoulders, and even though Sheepstealer wants to protect her, 3 dragons are facing him, keeping him from doing anything. Cornered, Rhaenyra falls to her knees and confesses what she did. She couldn't control her dragon, which led to Jace's death along with all those innocent soldiers. Enraged, Rhaenyra starts approaching her, but right then, Sheepstealer decides to defend his rider at all costs, taking on 3 dragons all by himself. Syrax is the first to unleash her fire on Sheepstealer, who counters with a brutal strike, dragging her across the ground and dealing heavy damage. Luckily, Adam's dragon is right there to lend a hand. Sheepstealer comes out on top in the 2-on-1, but Syrax manages to injure his throat, causing him serious pain. At that moment, we see Daemon mounted on Caraxes, who outmatches everyone in sheer size, grabbing Sheepstealer with his talons to slam him directly into the dirt. Rhaenyra snatches Rhaenyra up and takes to the skies on her dragon, while the last thing Rhaenyra sees before pulling away is Caraxes clamping onto her dragon's neck, dealing a devastating wound. Daemon orders Adam to take flight and escort the queen. Syrax is injured, and she will need his help, assuring him that he will take care of finishing this off, since Sheepstealer is badly wounded and won't put up much resistance. With a command in High Valyrian, Daemon orders Caraxes to kill the rogue dragon. At that moment, Caraxes lunges at the base of its wing and begins biting it with all his strength, but Sheepstealer isn't willing to go down so easily and strikes him hard with his tail, managing to knock Daemon off his back. This buys him just enough seconds to escape, and even though he can't take flight, Daemon decides that enough is enough, and a dead dragon would be a massive loss, even when dealing with one so wild and practically untamable. On the other side of the story, Rhaenyra finally reaches King's Landing and orders Rhaenyra to be placed in a room and kept there until she figures out what to do with her. In Harrenhal, Alicent prepares a wine spiked with the poisonous berries and goes to her son's room, where he is practicing with his sword and trying to regain his strength. She tells him she knows full well that Alice doesn't want her there, and that if she is disrupting any kind of understanding they had, she can leave without drama. She doesn't want to cause him trouble while he is still injured. Her son tells her there is no need to listen to everything Alice says. He trusts her, but he trusts his mother as well. It's right at this moment that Alicent figures it's wise to place the glass of wine in his hand and ask him to drink up so he can sleep much better tonight. With the poisoned glass of wine in hand, Aemond confesses one of his absolute biggest secrets to his mother, that he tried to kill his brother. But she merely strokes his face gently and tells him that she already knew about it all along. He has always been quite a foolish child. To keep us hanging on the cliffhanger, we don't actually get to see if Aemond drinks the wine, but we do travel to King's Landing, where Daemon tries to explain to his wife why he did what he did. Lying to her about catching Sheepstealer's rider was a mistake, and Rhaenyra confesses that every night she looks at that skull he brought her, thinking over and over that her son actually got justice for his death, only to find out it was all a complete lie. Daemon strokes her face and assures her he would never conspire against her, that he only wanted to do what was best for both sides, while confessing that he hasn't been a good father to Rhaenyra and didn't want to watch her die like that. In the room where she has been confined, Rhaenyra gets a visit from Baela, and you can clearly see the resentment in her eyes. So the young girl just starts apologizing for everything that happened. She knows full well that she was destined to become both a queen and a wife, and now none of that will ever happen. Baela tells her to shut her mouth, walks over slowly, and then wraps her in a hug, telling her that she is going to start over, and that she had better do it right this time. At the exact same time that happens, Adam is wrapping up his daily patrol when one of the soldiers hands him him a small box that arrived for him, inside of which lies his father's finger, along with his house seal ring, a direct message he ought to understand immediately. Back in Harrenhal, Aemond staggers into Alice's room feeling extremely dizzy, and just a few seconds later is protexes right onto the floor. But she doesn't react at all. In fact, she knew full well this was going to happen and tells him out loud that he's a total idiot. At the exact same time that happens, Alicent is processing the reality that she just murdered her own son and needs to get out of the castle immediately. There's no turning back after this point. She has to run away fast, and without Sir Edrian's protection, she likely won't make it very far. Back home, Helena is having yet another one of her visions, where she can see the exact moment she gives birth. But as soon as her baby leaves her womb, the soldiers snatch him away, leaving her without even the chance to see whether it's a boy or a girl. However, we do get to see her riding her dragon, facing off against the city soldiers and burning them all to a crisp with fire. At the end of the vision, she finds herself on the farm she has always wanted, surrounded by chickens and her 2 children, when all of a sudden it starts snowing and a dense fog covers everything completely. Once night falls, Rhaenyra hasn't been able to fall asleep, so she gets up, grabs the fake skull sitting on her table, and tosses it into the fire. Even though we expected to see her go make peace with her husband, Rhaenyra ends up in Mysaria's chambers instead, accusing her of doing everything necessary to turn her against Daemon. But Mysaria tells her she is only acting in her own best interest and has been trying to guide her to rule as her father once did. These sweet words manage to win her over, and the very next thing we see is the 2 of them locking lips in a kiss that doesn't just stop there, as Mysaria pulls her down onto the bed and they keep going. Since that's not nearly as interesting as what's about to happen to Aegon, we travel over to his confrontation with the Redfish army, where their leader tells them they are claiming this land under the authority of Rhaenyra, the rightful queen of the 7 kingdoms, and they must drop to their knees or die. However, Aegon has another plan, telling them he doesn't intend to submit to the fake reign of the Targaryen bitch. At that point, the army leader recognizes Tywin Lannister and tells him he'll be dragged off to the capital to spill where he hid the stolen gold. As for the deformed guy, he's dying right here, right now. Furious, Aegon snaps back that he's no deform. His name is Aegon Targaryen, true heir to Viserys, 6th of his name, king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, anointed by the High Septon himself under the light of the 7, and under that very same light, he'll fight them right now. While he's shouting all this, the men start backing away, not because they're scared of him, but because something terrifying is creeping up behind them. When Aegon turns around, he realizes his beloved Sunfire is still alive. His precious dragon, the one he longed so much to see return, is standing right behind him. With this image of Aegon standing in front of all these men, and with his deformed dragon looming right behind him, the episode comes to an end, but not before we see him utter Dracarys as the fire consumes the soldiers, leaving them with no choice but to run for their lives. In a final scene, far away from the dragonfire, we can see Ormond having a friendly meeting with Ulf, who is finally enjoying a cold beer after missing it for so long. Ormond tells him he heard about the unfortunate incident back in town, where Daemon beat and humiliated him right in front of the commoners, even though he's a knight and doesn't deserve that kind of treatment. Ulf confesses that the queen broke her promise. They promised him a castle, yet he hasn't received anything so far. He wished he could live in Honeyholt, but Ormond cuts him off and tells him that place is absolute trash. A man like him deserves nothing less than Driftmark, the seat of House Velaryon, which won't belong to them much longer anyway, and he's ready to hand it over if he swears loyalty. Ulf would become the Lord of the Tides, a major position of power in the 7 kingdoms, and no one would ever laugh at him or humiliate him again. But Ulf cuts him off this time, stating that not only will they not laugh, but they'll burn. And with Ulf's smile signaling a switch in sides, and Ormond securing a dragon for his ranks, the episode finally comes to a close. So make sure to leave a like and a comment so you don't miss what happens next week. The 8th episode of the 3rd season of House of the Dragon is here. After a week of silence, we return to King's Landing, where we can see Maester Orwyll running through the corridors towards the Queen's quarters. Rhaenyra wakes up agitated, and later we can see her arrive at Daemon's room to tell him that Sunfire has been resurrected, which means Aegon is still alive. Her husband finds this story hard to believe. He himself saw Sunfire rotting in a wasteland, and he asks her to be a bit more rational, but the news has already been verified. The dragon incinerated the soldiers of Motown, and Aegon made an appearance before this happened. What is worse is that several ravens have already been intercepted with news of the rightful king's return. The news of a king who has risen from the dead, along with his dragon, is gaining momentum, and there is no doubt that his next stop will be the throne. Right at this moment, the Great Sept is filled with people calling for the return of the rightful king and asking the faith to tell them whom they should lead after she has been through so much to get here. Her husband tells her that the throne is maintained with power, and there is no one in the Seven Kingdoms who has more power than she does, and that is what they will use. They are the last remnant of old Valyria, and that is worth more than any miracle. Previous trials mean nothing if she is not willing to show that she has the strength required to keep the throne, and finally decides to listen to her husband. He tells her to send the dragon seeds to watch the dragon pit. If Aegon shows up, they will kill him. He wants to be the one to go toward Tumbleton and search house by house until all the high towers keeping the people subjugated are dead. Upon leaving her husband's quarters, the queen is in war mode when Baela approaches to ask what will happen to her grandfather. He is still a prisoner of the high towers, and she does not want him to die in the crossfire. Rhaenyra reminds her that Corlys made his choice, and she has other priorities. It is here that the young woman decides to answer back to an official order from the queen and make her see that she is using people while they are useful, and then abandoning them. The only reason she is still here is because she needs her dragon. The queen reminds her that she is still here, even after what happened at the Gullet, so she cannot dare to judge her decisions when she has made much worse ones. She is just an insolent girl who thinks she knows what she is doing or even understands sacrifice. In an instant, the queen grabs her face and calls her insolent, telling her she does not blame her. In fact, that runs in her blood, although she is basically warning her to watch her tongue or she will lose it. At the same time that happens, on the beach, the last men of Velaryon arrive to ask what the plan is to rescue their Lord Corlys, but Alan tells them that their task is to defend the city, since the queen for the moment has no plan that includes rescuing his father. In Tumbleton, Ormond has already learned of the movement of Rhaenyra's forces toward the city and has ordered his men to prepare for battle. Meanwhile, he must resolve an urgent matter. To be crowned king, Daemon must first be knighted, and it would be an honor for him to use his sword for such an event. Adopting the name they have been using for him, Sir Daeron the Daring, illuminator of the path. From the honorable ceremony we move to the tavern, where Ulf shows us that he has switched sides, as while enjoying a beer, he is insulting Daemon and telling him that soon the Queen of Bastards will feel the wrath and fire of his dragon for having lied to him. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra maintains her attitude and begins giving very important orders. First, she wants a full escort to travel to the Great Hall, because today they will anoint her as the new queen, and the faith will not be able to refuse to recognize her. In addition, she orders her men to go to Mysaria's room and gather all her things, since her service is over, and she will travel to Pentos that night with enough gold for a mansion, in gratitude for her services. Although Mysaria wants to talk to the queen, she is not allowed to, as her order has been very clear. She must leave at dusk, and the person giving her the news confesses that he does not understand what is happening and asks her to take care of herself. In the castle gardens, Helena has not eaten a bite for 2 days, and she looks quite emaciated. However, when the officer informs her that her free hour is over, she ends up bumping into Mysaria, and part of her vision comes true. In just a few seconds, Mysaria reveals to her that Aegon is still alive and that Sunfire has risen. Furthermore, she cannot trust the queen, and the child she carries in her womb will be the perfect hostage so they can assassinate her father. The soldiers drag her toward the cart, while Mysaria repeats to her over and over that she will never be free, not as long as they can use her. At that instant, the scene cuts, and we travel to Harrenhal, where Aemond cannot believe that his own mother poisoned him, and once again, Alice has saved his life. This has strengthened the feeling between them, and that is why they end up kissing. But the one who is no longer playing games is Rhaenyra, and when Helena refuses to eat, she orders the guards to subdue her and pour the broth into her mouth until she finally swallows. It is a very harsh scene for everyone. And although before she would not be capable of doing these things, now she stands for a few seconds watching to assure Helena that this will keep happening. She either eats the easy way or eats the hard way, since that child will come into this world and will be used as bait to lure its father, unless she marries him off first. Below, in the barracks, Adam has arrived and wants to know what plan his brother has to rescue their father, but Alan is using the Velaryon forces to defend the city, and for the moment, Corlys is not on his mind. This causes Adam to get a bit enraged, telling him that all he wants is for their father to die so he can take his place as Hand of the King. A few seconds later, the Queen comes out in her ceremonial attire to be escorted directly to the Great Sept, where the Faith will recognize her leadership by fair means or foul. Back in Tumbleton, Daemon realizes they are vastly outnumbered, and Ormond has begun to implement some strategies with which he does not agree. He is putting innocent children on the wall to prevent the dragons from attacking. His trusted man informs him that Ulf has not reported in, and his men lost sight of his dragon, which ends up infuriating him, since a dragon is an important asset, but he should never have trusted a drunkard, much less given him so much freedom. From the walls, Daemon can see the triumphant entrance of Daemon, who has arrived to lead the attack. As the flapping of Carax's wings kicks up the city's dust, Ormond wanders the streets looking for his ally, who is drunk in a tavern. Outside Tumbleton, Daemon has dismounted from his dragon, as this battle requires his personal touch. Carax's fire would be very useful, but it would end up incinerating both the enemy and the innocent children, so this time he will use his sword. When Roddy the Ruin reveals to him that Cole died in a ridiculous manner, his spirits lift, but one of his men informs him that a high tower soldier is approaching and bringing Lord Corlys with him. This turns out to be Wayne, who has a dagger at Corlys's ribs and has come to negotiate, or rather, to beg, since he is sure they would not survive a single day if the attack breaks out. Wayne confesses to him that Ormond has lost his mind. He is willing to sacrifice the lives of all those innocent people just to avoid admitting he has been defeated. But he is no fool and wants to return Corlys to them as a gift of good faith, so they will allow them to make amends for their mistake. But he wants something in return. He wants peace between the Hightowers and the Targaryens, through which they will name Daemon as Lord of Old Town. It is here that Corlys decides to speak and tell him that it would not be such a bad idea, since many of the houses on that side of the realm still hold to the old traditions that a woman cannot rule. With this, they not only ensure that Daemon will never be king, but that he can be the protector of the South alongside his dragon, and when the time comes, he can marry him to Rhaenyra, having a much more powerful alliance than the one that would be lost with a battle on this day, an alliance that will allow him to conquer the Vale and the Stormlands, something Daemon indeed wants, as for a long time he has been tired of settling for King's Landing and desires the whole world. It is a key decision. The only drawback to this perfect plan is that somewhere in these lands, Aegon is still alive, crawling with a crippled dragon. However, the decision belongs to Daemon at this moment. Before him lie two paths that end in the same place, with his wife on the Iron Throne. Only one spills blood on this day, while the other promises a husband for his daughter, to whom he also owes a much better life than the one she has had. But if Lord Corlys believed for a moment that he could get inside Daemon's mind to get him to do what he wants, he is gravely mistaken, as his next order is to take him prisoner and let Wayne leave, so he can warn his cousin that today he will die in the worst possible way. Before the battle begins, we travel to Harrenhal, where we can see that Aemond has just awoken from a nightmare, but he can hear the flapping of a dragon's wings and believes it to be his own. However, when he goes out into the ruins, he runs into his brother and the revelation that Sunfire can still fly. Aegon approaches slowly, while his brother collapses to the ground, repeating over and over that this is not possible. He should be dead, but with a slap, he brings him back to reality, and Aemond can do nothing other than apologize and beg for his forgiveness. But Aegon is not enjoying this vengeance, and although he has his sword and could cut off the usurper's head, he would feel no pleasure in doing so. Aemond tells him that he coveted what he had and judged his ability to rule. Those were the reasons for trying to kill him and take his place, so whatever punishment he receives, he is willing to accept it. At that instant, Aegon draws his sword and places it against his neck, right at the moment when Alice appears. Aegon tells her to get her things. They are going to Tumbleton, but Alice reveals to him that Aemond is in no condition, and worse yet, his dragon abandoned him. But that is no excuse, and Aegon orders Alice to be quiet, as she will not be part of this conversation. Then he reveals to his brother what is happening outside, since he has been on a little honeymoon during this time. First, they are going to find Vhagar, and then they will travel to Tumbleton, where that fool Ormond is supporting Daemon, the idiot boy who thinks he can be king, so together they will put him in his place, and then they will march on King's Landing under his banner. and when Rhaenyra's head is on a pike, they will talk about the forgiveness he has begged for so much. Back on the battlefield, Lord Tully tells him that he has analyzed the city thoroughly, and there is an area to the southeast that would be ideal for a fire attack. That will bring down their defenses, and they could have the city under the Queen's banners by dusk. However, there is a very important matter that he must give his men before the battle. Their swords and arrows must only harm the high towers. The realm is watching what is happening, and the Queen's moral stance cannot be called into question. It is here that one of the men appears and gives them the bad news. The southeast area they were intending to attack has been fortified with children on the walls, and many more sightings are being confirmed along the entire perimeter. Which means that if Daemon uses his dragon, he will break the rule he has just set for everyone. So now this will be a land battle, and Roddy the Ruin will lead the vanguard. His northerners will use their rage to strike terror into the heart of the enemy, using ladders to scale the wall and open the gate so the rest can pass through. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra has invaded the High Sept, along with Alan and his men, and this time she will not take no for an answer. The elders will recognize her reign, and she does not care about the rumors that Aegon is still alive. At that moment, Rhaenyra names him a traitor and orders Alan to execute the sentence, but the High Septon tells him that he is a holy man, and harming him will damn his soul to hell, causing Alan to hesitate for a second. However, Rhaenyra promises him he will be part of the new Valyria and forge a path by her side, with new gods, not elders. At that precise instant, Alan makes his choice and uses his sword to run through the most important man of the faith, staining his blade with holy blood and damning his future. Outside, Rhaenyra is delivering a speech to all the people who were waiting for news from the Great Sept, telling them that long before her father recognized him, her reign had already been prophesied, and that she was recognized by hundreds of lords who traveled thousands of leagues just to swear allegiance to her before the gods. After her speech, we return to the battlefield, where Daemon is ready to launch the attack, but first he makes sure to give them a war speech, a much more motivating one, telling them that today, even if they are mercenaries, they are the sons of the North and will be the ones to put an end to the high towers, pompous fools who have thought too highly of themselves for too long. He does not want their best. He wants their worst, that their screams instill fear into their hearts and accompany them into the fires of hell. Even Roddy the Ruin feels motivated by the speech and takes the lead, following northern tradition, where they combine the sound of their swords with drums, creating a rhythm of death that can be heard in the city. That sound is so terrifying that we can see a scene of children hiding behind the wall, wetting their pants and crying in fear. But even though the children are afraid, the Hightower soldiers stand firm and unleash a volley of arrows, as well as the catapults, finally starting the battle. At that moment, we can see Ormond furious because he has not managed to find Ulf, and one of his servants appears to tell him that the battle has begun and that negotiations have failed. But he had no idea of such negotiation, so he has realized that Daemon and Wayne betrayed him. Outside, the battle has begun. The northern men have reached the walls and set up ladders, making their attempt to climb, but the soldiers throw boiling oil and rocks at them, managing to carry out the perfect distraction while the rest of the forces attack from the south side. And a few seconds later, we can see that Roddy the Ruin is the first to scale the wall and spill Hightower blood. Unfortunately, he arrives too late, and the soldiers manage to light the trenches, burning many of his men. But the interesting part is that one of the servants approaches Daemon and tells him that he cannot find Ulf the White. So basically, Ulf has deserted, not from one side, but from both, and perhaps we will not see him in this battle. The unexpected event is that Hugh appears, riding his dragon, but he is supposed to be guarding King's Landing, not here in the battle. After a while, Daemon begins to lose patience upon realizing that Roddy has failed to open the gate, so he calls Caraxes to burn the entire middle section of the wall, unconcerned about the innocent children who were on it. In front of the main gate were a dozen children, and more than half were smart enough to run away, but 2 of them remained defending the gate, and Daemon had no other choice but to incinerate them. With the gate finally open, Daemon led the vanguard, but ended up running into a massive ambush, and the Hightower soldiers managed to knock him off his horse. A few seconds later, we can see that Ormond has finally managed to find Ulf, who had passed out drunk in a privy, and the stench was completely nauseating. The battle becomes even more cruel, and the fate of the city hangs in the balance. Furious, he ended up humiliating him far more than Daemon ever did, and after hitting him a couple of times, he told him to get on his beast and do his job. In the midst of battle, Daemon was slaying his enemies when he could see Hugh fighting alongside him, but shouting the name of his wife, whom he had come to rescue. Although Daemon was looking for Ormond, he ended up meeting his right-hand man, who is highly trained and will give him a good fight. While that happens, Ulf reaches his dragon, and the Hightower soldiers kill the boy who was guarding it. Outside, Ulf finally appears atop Silverwing, and Daemon's men celebrate his arrival. But a few seconds later, he turns around and orders his dragon to incinerate them all. When Ormond sees Silverwing burn his enemies to ashes, he is filled with excitement for the battle, but ends up running into Roddy, who is eager to kill him, and he has an advantage. The old man stinks so badly that he throws Ormond off balance and has him on the ropes, but Ormond draws his sword and runs him through the stomach, then severs his hand with a single blow. What Ormond did not expect was that the old man would use the blood pouring from his wound to blind him, and this disgusts him so much that he tries to flee. But Roddy pulls out a knife and drives it, well, you know where. At that precise instant, Ulf notices this, and seeing that Ormond is about to die and will not be able to fulfill his promise, decides to take revenge for the humiliation, and orders his dragon to incinerate them both. Roddy and Ormond end up being destroyed by dragonfire, as well as a large portion of the streets, as Ulf has decided to unleash his wrath upon the entire city. This destruction reaches Daemon, who was about to be killed by Roddy, but the collapse ends up saving his life. However, when he manages to get up, he realizes the vast destruction caused by the dragon. Hundreds or perhaps thousands of innocent people have been killed, and the queen will not be pleased with this at all. Despite this, Daemon continues fighting until Corlys finds him and reveals that Ulf has just betrayed them. The city is lost, and they must leave. In the sky, we can see Caraxes following Silverwing and using his fire to keep him at bay, but the damage is already done, and what dragonfire causes cannot be undone. Among the dead are Ormond and Hugh's wife, who cannot help but scream with all his strength upon finding her corpse. As for Wayne, he manages to get up, but there is no sign of Darren anywhere. The third season comes to an end, with a scene of the city in flames. While on the battlefield, the dead are beyond count, but one death that truly hits hard happens in King's Landing, when the queen is informed that Helena has thrown herself from her window. The only thing she left behind was her loom, foretelling what was going to happen. But what interests Rhaenyra is the image of herself sitting on the Iron Throne, as a sign that she is destined to rule the Seven Kingdoms and much more, so she simply closes the window and delivers the season finale.